I want to call this meeting to order. I'd like to start with just a brief prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for our ability to gather together. Please give us wisdom to make wise decisions. And above all, thank you, Lord, for airplanes. Amen. Amen. So we are missing Will this evening because his third child came 2 weeks early. So congratulations to Will and Mom. It really brings to light why we're here on the board, and it's for a healthy future for our airport. So we want to welcome Jonathan Lawrence Alders to the world and keep our airport growing in a healthy way so he can grow up and be a pilot. How about that?
Amen.
Yeah, so congratulations, Mom and Dad, for the new baby. All right, so let's start with our regular agenda. Consider approval of the meetings from January 29th, 26th. There was a small typo. Colin, did we fix that? Do we need to do anything about that?
I can fix that.
Okay. Has everyone read them? Everyone's good?
Yeah, what was the typo?
The Milam 6, I think, is misspelled.
Okay.
So, nothing major.
I make a motion to approve
The minutes with the correction. With the correction.
All in favor?
To have a second.
Oh, I thought he did. Who did first? Who did second?
Doesn't matter, whatever. You motion, I'll second.
I did.
Let's
John
try
motioned.
this
How about we
again.
start over?
Let's start over.
Sorry.
Go. Somebody.
I'll make the motion, we accept the minutes with the correction.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we accept the minutes. Receive staff report on the airport runway taxiway paving project. And Colin, this is you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, hopefully our engineers are with us. Chad, Bob, are you on the line? Okay,
Mike, you couldn't pull it off?
guess not.
Working my angles.
Okay.
We'll do this the old-fashioned way.
Okay.
Get it over there. Okay. And Mike, feel free to fill in any gaps. I'm trying to remember a lot here. So the runway project is on schedule to start Monday. The official runway closure time is 8 a.m. The ILS will be shut off around 8 a.m. The barricades will go up, and barring any bad weather, the contractor will actually get started on Monday. So we met the contractor in a pre-construction meeting a couple weeks ago. The contractor's Don Jackson Construction out of the Waco area. Lots of airport experience, and come well recommended from TxDOT. They are using a mix of their own people and local subs, regional subs, to get this project knocked out. Unlike the way it was designed or presented in the design package, they are actually proposing to address the runway and taxiway at the same time, basically moving crews from one to the other rather than bringing them back in the fall. They feel very confident they can knock both of them out during the allotted closure time. So I think that's good news. It's overall those portions of the project won't keep them lingering here. However, there has been some additions to the project here at the last minute that were prompted from a FAA review of our airport layout plan. So as you know, we finished that airport layout plan this last December. It was shipped off to the FAA for review and approval. They've had it since then, and a few weeks ago, maybe less than a few weeks ago, they notified TxDOT that there were deficiencies in our runway safety area, mainly terrain, slope and grade and ditch deficiencies, meaning the ditches are too close to our runway and within the runway safety area. I don't know the whole history of this, but according to the engineers, at one time when our minimums were a little higher, the RSA was a total width of 150, I guess, so 75 from the center line of the runway. And somewhere along the way, that increased to 300 total or 150. But no one addressed these embankments and ditches within this area at the time, and it is just lingered out there. I mean, frankly, we haven't had an ALP done since 2008, so I guess those are the mechanisms for those to get caught. And so I think the lesson learned here is to not do an ALP very often. No. Anyway, so they flagged it. TxDOT sent us a message a couple weeks ago that said, this is a big deal. This is the kind of safety issue that's going to keep us from getting grant funding going forward, and it'll be the first thing we have to address if we don't address it now. But in the same sentence, they offered to address these issues as part of our current paving project. So the bids came in very competitive and came in well under budget for the paving project. So they've offered to absorb the RSA work in this current project, and the contractor has agreed and the engineer has agreed. And it's going to be very stressful for both of them, especially the engineer, having to try to incorporate that and feed them data at this last minute. I mean, it's literally going to be straight off the engineer's computer into the contractor's hand. It'll still be hot, too hot to eat, but they feel confident they can get it done as part of this project. The unknown issues with doing that work are whether the weather, because the paving is not we're not milling or removing the asphalt, so the weather won't affect the paving as much because you're not exposing raw ground, but the dirt work and moving these ditches and these slopes will. So the exhibit I handed you kind of shows you where these areas are. Basically, the infield ditch that's closest and parallel to the runway would need to move away from it, along with the culverts that go under the taxiways. There's a ditch that it doesn't drain well on the southwest side of the runway. That'll need to move out. And the biggest effort is going to be on the very northwest corner of the runway. As you recall, there's a little shelf, and then it drops way down into that creek. Well, that slope starts way too close to the runway to meet current standards. So they estimate something like 20,000 cubic yards of fill to move that slope out and extend that culvert and create a larger flat shelf there. That area is the most time consuming. So the goal right now is to try to address these infield ditches and this ditch on the southwest during the closure period. We're not so sure they can address that slope during the closure period. This is all very preliminary, so I'll update you when I can. But I think it could be that slope area to the northwest will be addressed after the runway reopens, which might mean we have to displace the threshold, 500 to 1,000 feet on that end to allow them to work. And
In the ditch area, not,
on that big
Oh.
slope there and in that ditch area.
and then just shorten the runway so that
Shorten,
they have.
you'd
that-
basically have, let's say, and don't hold me to this, 4,000 feet to work with on the south end of the runway, the south 4,000 feet. For whatever period of time they need to complete extending that culvert and moving that slope over. So that's, Mike, if I recall right. I mean, again, I wish we had the engineers here to expand on this. Mike, do you?
Well, they're telling me they're online. Chad, can you unmute your mic? Can you hear us? Chad, Bob? Okay. No, they should be, but they're not. No, everything Colin said is correct. Again, this isn't something that's going to impact the taxiways. We would have to, it will impact those taxiway intersections with the runway. That can be quick work done within the time frame of the runway itself. The displacement is really the largest factor here. They are, Don Jackson, TxDOT, as are we, sensitive to that start date in the fall being a real critical factor for getting that runway open. We still anticipate sticking to that particular date. It's the additional work that may impact, and for lack of a better term, it's just going to shorten the runway so they can get those safety areas fully implemented. We'll meet that standard, we'll meet that obligation, and we can move on. It may be 30 to 60 days. It could be up to 90 if we have inclement weather interrupting a lot of that. We haven't really mapped out those contingencies in that portion of time. But we do believe for the majority of our aircraft that we serve at the airport, we'll still meet our normal timelines. We have to accomplish that extra work. Here's the key to that, and Colin mentioned this, if we forego that and we say we don't want to mess with our deadline, we like what we have because everything's in line, we lose the ability of TxDOT to cover that with the existing budget. We lose TxDOT's authority to grant us additional funds in the future. We lose potential, or we risk impacting our thresholds for a long period of time until then we bear that burden to accomplish those projects. It does take time. It's going to force us to kind of go back to our pencils and make sure that it all fits within the schedule. Don Jackson Construction, they've done this before. They can work this into their schedule for the most part. We're just going to have to go with what we have and make sure we minimize that impact, and we're doing that now.
And you said they're adding, or they're utilizing additional local contractors, Don Jackson, did I understand that, Colin?
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I believe they're buying their asphalt here from Longview and using Texas materials, I believe was the name of and I think they're at least a regional, if not, I don't know if they're local, but they're regional, I believe. There's someone out of Jacksonville, Caragor's going to do the striping, who's the closest person they could find, and stuff like that. If you need a list, I'll have to get that to you.
No,
but
I don't need a list. I was just curious, since this is in the midnight hour, this happened, whether it be legal or not, I couldn't answer this, but, to bring in an additional sub to complement these guys, it could have extra dump trucks, have extra graders, or have, whatever we need, and work under them, but, as a sub.
Well, and again, this is the ability to accomplish this additional work is being driven by Don Jackson. Now, we anticipated when we put together the scope that this would be sort of a linear process. They start on one part of it, they move on to the next part, and the next part with literally the same crew. Again, just an assumption. And they've said, well, we can work on multiple parts at once. We've got a variety of crews under our umbrella that come out here and operate at the same time. We can move fast, and they can be flexible in how they do it. So yes, this does impact how they're going to plan it out. We've given them some notice that that's what we anticipate, and we think they can accomplish it. And they've told us that. It's really being driven by TxDOT's ability to fund it and how we move it forward. So as we are engaged in different aspects of that, different hurdles in the project, different elements that we need to address, we're communicating with TxDOT on that, and they're driving that forward. So to answer your question, if there were questions about how subcontractors might be incorporated, they've got to run those through KSA engineers and TxDOT and follow the same rules.
Okay, thanks.
I'd just like to make the comment that if we need fill dirt, take it from the north side of 225 and let's lower that hill a little bit.
Yeah, I'd actually recommend, and I'd love your advice on this, I'd actually recommend that they try to borrow it in that area between the remnant of 1533 and Taxiway A. One of the biggest cost estimates that Wolpert included in the estimate for the terminal project was earthwork.
Yeah.
So if we could get a jump start on that with this project, I mean, hey, why not? So that's what I'm asking for. I don't know if it's feasible, but that's what I'm asking for. Chad, are you online on with us now?
We won't be able to correct this. They're online somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out later, so I apologize for that.
All right.
So would we just anticipate coming in on Taxiway Bravo and then back taxing to wherever the displaced threshold would be? Is that the plan?
What you'd have to do.
Or would they,
Correct.
or would they make us a way to get to the end of the runway?
It'll be back taxing.
Yeah.
There was always some back taxi in this project anyway. I mean, when he said he would try to do both the runway and taxiway at the same time, for a second there, we thought, okay, no back taxi, but now it looks like there could definitely be that in the project, so.
Okay.
Any more questions on the project?
If there's other questions that are better suited with a response from the KSA engineers, project engineers, we're happy to relay that and send information back to the board. We can do that too.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, anybody have any questions while we're on this? Are we good? Nope. Okay. Okay, so let's move to C. Advise on the airport offering unleaded aviation fuel and the installation of an above-ground fuel storage tank and supporting infrastructure to sell such fuel. Who has this one?
I can introduce it.
Okay, go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I'll probably just read what we had in the agenda for those who didn't see that, but while Hunter Low Lead is still coming, the FAA approvals for unleaded alternatives are rising. The FAA Eliminate Aviation Gasoline Lead Emissions Initiative currently targets eliminating lead from aviation gasoline by 2030. The FAA also distributed a draft transition plan for public comment on January 2026, and U.S. representatives have even introduced legislation that would require the FAA to create education program about the move. Flight schools and universities are increasingly transitioning student training aircraft to unleaded fuels like G100UL and UL94 to reduce maintenance costs, engine wear, and environmental impact. As additional unleaded aviation fuel alternatives are expected to evolve over the next few years, many factors outside the FAA's control may also affect the timeline away from leaded aviation fuel. Moreover, it is possible that during the latter phases of the transition, whenever it happens, the sale of leaded aviation fuel could be limited or prohibited. The addition of an additional fuel tank at the airport to sell unleaded aviation fuel alongside the current leaded fuel tank could aid in offering both fuels during the early stages of a possible transition. The installation of a 12,000-gallon ground tank integrated into the existing self-serve fuel area and kiosk, as well as the lease of an additional refueler truck, and it is anticipated for this offering. The unleaded aviation fuel would be offered to local and transient aircraft. It is anticipated that HCH Aviation will utilize this fuel, as well as other based and transient aircraft that prefer and or are approved for unleaded aviation fuel. It is estimated that annual sales of unleaded aviation fuel could start around 40,000, 50,000 gallons here at our airport, with most of that consumed by the HCH Aviation training fleet of aircraft. The estimated cost of the infrastructure is $450,000. The estimated cost to lease another truck is approximately $1,000. I mean, it's favorable. The city's current fuel provider, Titan Aviation Fuels, can supply an unleaded aviation fuel. Specifically, it's Swift's 94 UL aviation fuel.
Okay, so y'all are asking for our advice whether we think it would be appropriate to spend $500,000 on this tank?
This goes back a little way. It goes back a few months. I kind of came into the game with Colin probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, right around the time that we were having some discussions and working on some solutions in partnership with the flight school. In those discussions, there was a need based on how the flight school was operating at the time to have unleaded fuel for those aircraft that are currently at the airport. We don't serve unleaded fuel currently. We serve 100 low lead and we serve Jet A. Providing that fuel is not something we can just turn on a dime and do. There are infrastructure costs, there's other things that we need to do to work with the flight school in providing something to make that work. We put together some temporary agreements, those are included in your packet. And this speaks a little bit to the next item, but we're going to talk in general here, what's maybe long-term, what's good for the airport. In doing that, we don't want there to continue to be temporary arrangements or makeshift arrangements or ad hoc arrangements that only serve one particular stakeholder or one particular client at the airport. We want to build something that serves all airport stakeholders and clients, visitors, those that are here on a regular basis that would otherwise utilize unleaded fuel. What we don't know is how prevalent is that? Is there a need for that now? Is there potentially a need? And we provided some federal content that it's being looked at the federal level. How likely is it to be implemented? Are we going down the same path as electric vehicles? And what kind of massive shift in industry would have to happen for those to be prevalent? Is it just simply going to be a mandate that we have to follow at some point? We get a lot of those. That's kind of the big question. We may be ahead of the game here in how this is done. We may be asking the board to weigh in on something that may be a little early in terms of the industry and what it really looks like at our airport and who it would actually serve. We know right now that our flight school is not buying our fuel. That's what we know today. We know that fuel is a primary revenue generator for the airport, by far. And we know just without diversification in other areas of airport service and things that we offer, we're very sensitive to any volatile changes in airport fuel sales. With this change and with the flight school and how they operate, and that change in buying our fuel has had an impact on our revenue. It would have an impact long-term on our sustainability if we don't identify another solution or something that can complement what we're losing. This is an idea, it's long-term. Does it serve the best interests of the broad audience of our airport? It's a question for the board to consider. And it could dictate hard discussions as we get into the EPIO agreement later on in this agenda. But I want to talk in terms of how does it serve everyone at the airport? Is this a legitimate direction the airport can go with in terms of infrastructure? The cost would be public dollars. The airport does have donation dollars that it can spend potentially with some justification. We would have some conversations about that. There is bond money that we can spend for airport improvements holistically. We've talked at length about most of those bond funds being targeted toward terminal development. We've looked at the airport layout plan and we know what those costs are estimated to be. Do we go a different direction? Do we invest in some of these smaller things that we know can turn around revenue today, drive some of that, the goals that we have? We've got a lot of goals for the airport. Drive some of those goals into tomorrow. A lot of big hanging questions to answer, but realistically, we're kind of focused on, if we go down this road of providing unleaded fuel, is it good for the airport long term? And that's kind of where we want to focus.
So there's not a lot of financial information here. So how long would it take to recoup that money if we were selling even 50,000 gallons?
I don't know. I don't know what our price point would be, and if we would bake that recoupment within the sale of each gallon of unleaded fuel solely.
So we don't know what Swift's fuel price is currently.
I believe, Colin, if we looked at,
Yeah, I mean,
looked
my
at that
last-
at
my
the
last-
Waco airport.
Higher than it was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, fuel's crazy right now, so everything's kind of with a grain of salt, and I know you don't like that, but
Yeah, but you
I
can
mean-
compare it to what 100
Yeah.
low lead is.
yeah, so I did. So I got a spot price on around the first week of March.
Okay.
At that time, our price, our wholesale price for a full load, which is 8,000 gallons of the Swift fuel, was $1.28 more per gallon than 100 low lead.
So why are we looking at another 12,000 gallon tank? Why don't we look, I mean, do you have numbers on a 3,000 or 4,000 gallon tank? Because you're selling a lot of leaded fuel now. At some point, that's gonna flip.
Well,
Good question. I mean, all of it's a balance of, are we spending more money on overhead? Are we spending more money to ship transport more shipments depending on our sales. If we're anticipating that the flight school, again, this is projection. If we're anticipating the flight school being the largest consumer, for instance, of course there would be others, then we would assume 45, maybe potentially 50,000 gallons a year of fuel would be sold,
That's 3,000 to
just to that
4,000
consumer. And how often we would be replacing that fuel within a 12,000 gallon tank would be somewhat consistent with how we're doing it today. If we're anticipating other consumers of that fuel, a 12,000 gallon tank would be consistent with what we're doing. It also is consistent with how Titan is shipping that fuel on a regular basis to us. You know, a larger load at one time reduces the overhead cost, the
Yeah, they-
transportation
Whole
cost,
thing.
all
They
the other
charge you
things
full, charge you for, this fuel comes
that
out
aren't
of
related to
Indiana.
the fuel.
Yeah, the
So
fuel
there's like a
comes out of Indiana.
surcharge to bring it, no matter how much they're bringing it.
The freight cost is fixed.
Yeah.
So the less you buy, the more per gallon it costs. I can't tell you what that is, but it comes from Indiana, so you can just imagine.
So just, if it were only 50,000 gallons, if there weren't more, and there were let's say there was a 50-cent surcharge that we dedicated to recoup that cost, you'd look at 20 years for recouping that cost. If it were just the 50 cent, if that were the model of surcharge to whatever our revenue is on top of the wholesale
What's the
cost.
shelf life on unleaded gas?
Approximately 6 months that's what I've been
Okay.
told.
So you're talking 30,000 gallons. You're selling 30,000 gallons in 6 months, and you gotta get a new load. I don't see buying when you're not selling that much, I don't see buying a big tank, and at some point in the future, you're not gonna be selling the leaded gas, and you're gonna have an empty tank there.
I got a question too,
It
Mike.
makes sense, and the smaller tank can be consideration to reduce that cost.
So how much is the flight school not buying fuel costing the airport per month or a year? Because this plan is
we-
basically built on the back of HCH
Well,
Aviation.
that was my
Okay.
comment.
And so if that's the case, that's what you need to look at.
It is built primarily on that, because that's who our consumer would be.
Right.
And that's what's been driving the conversation. But the reason for this larger question is it gonna serve anybody else?
Well, I was about to say, and I mean, what guarantees do we have that HCH is gonna stick with this fleet? I mean, they could change to a different aircraft that uses 100 low
It's a good
lead.
question.
Personally, and I haven't studied this, but I don't see a huge demand outside of HCH right now for unleaded fuel. I know there's initiatives by the federal government, but my personal opinion is I don't see that happening in the near future, to where we have a lot of transient aircraft that are looking for unleaded fuel.
Okay.
And we would be doing this just anticipating that one entity would use it.
Well, the other thought is, yes, we know that right away, as soon as it's installed, our expectation would be that the flight school is buying that fuel, okay?
Is there guarantees on that? Are we gonna be able to recoup any cost from it?
How we price that would be anticipating that we're generating some similar amount of revenue that we generated when we were selling the
Low
flight
lead.
school,
So if the
low
flight-
lead and Jet A.
But it's gonna cost the flight school another $1.28 a gallon,
What are they using now?
a significant
If they're not
increase.
buying fuel from the airport,
They
what-
are, well,
over on
they
the
were
tank.
using 100 low lead, and then they switched.
so switch to what, and what is the cost of that? Who is the supplier?
We're using that UL 94.
Oh, I thought it was automotive gas.
They are here, so do you need me to
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, my understanding it's a
So do we need
it's
to
a
make-
it's a 94 octane ethanol free MoGas is what they're using currently. At least that was the last I was told.
That was the variance.
Do we need to go into 2E, maybe
Well, it's
having
written
this
like this. I
knowledge?
think it's written in this order.
Let's-
I'm understanding that
And I'm sorry, if the board can, and I understand the importance of the flight school being a major component of this, and it's driven the conversation up to this point. Can we kind of put it in terms of who else will it serve? And do we see this as knowing where that the federal government may be in a gray area or may still be examining this, not necessarily mandating this? Is there a benefit? Regardless of the cost, is there a benefit?
I would say for the next 10 years, very little, personally.
Do medium-sized planes use this, like
Very
private
few.
jets?
Very few.
For them to go 100 low lead-free, I mean, they're gonna be grounding thousands of airplanes
So this is
to
single
just,
engine.
to just do
This
that.
is single engine school planes.
It's
non-
just mostly for
horsepower
road
planes.
tax engines. It's the engines that the flight school, it's the fleet of aircraft they bought have road tax.
Okay, that was my
So-
They can use either.
They
just
can,
to be clear.
yes,
Okay.
yes, they can use either. Their POH says they can.
Okay, that was my question.
But they've chosen to start using this different
There are
kind.
significant benefits to using
Are we
lead-free
gonna
gas.
get into that in 2E or? I mean, I'd like to know the difference of.
I think
I'm
that
not
was
a
the plan.
Aircraft mechanic. so-
Yes, I think that was the plan. I think that it was written in this order so that we could kind of talk about, does it benefit the airport as a whole to buy a tank? The issue that's on D or E or whatever it is separate. I think that was what the city was asking.
And I kind of go, I'd have the same question as Ricky. Is there a way that we can purchase a somewhat smaller quantity? I mean, I think going with a full-size 12,000-gallon tank today, given how consistent our government has been over the last 20 years, might be a crapshoot. I mean, I'm not even sure whose favor it would fall in, but
I don't know that that would change the 450,000 very much, personally.
That's
No,
my question.
It's not.
I don't think so either, John.
It's
I-
a large initial investment
Yeah.
for,
regardless of the size of the tank, is what you're saying.
And keep in mind, this tank could be used for avgas or
Or
jet
fuel.
fuel in the future if the
Correct.
unleaded fuel, I mean, it's just a matter of flushing it out and reusing it. So we were just trying to keep things consistent to what we have so we can interchange and move. These are movable. If we ever build the terminal, we could move one or two or three.
Well, to sidestep on that, then, do you, as it stands today, is there a need for additional tanks for either the 100 low lead or the Jet A? I mean,
No.
would we benefit by having additional storage for that if the unleaded doesn't pan out like the government is expecting it to?
Not, and,
No.
and Colin you can back me up on this. We would increase the frequency of our deliveries to cover additional consumption with our existing tanks.
So
Whether
are
we
those
see enough
two-
demand where it causes a crunch and we can't serve fuel in a third tank, having a backup tank, whether it's converted away from unleaded, if it was unleaded initially and we found out that the market wasn't driving that and became something else. The cost for the tank and the infrastructure and the additions would be the same.
Mike, but in the master plan, we got another fuel farm.
Another location.
Right.
Mhm.
Those- So then we would have three.
Three.
What?
Well, I mean, we've got one now, we got one in the master plan at another location, and if you add this one, now we got three.
Well, this would be appended to the current fuel farm in its current location.
Okay? Still seems a little redundant to me, just personally.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the master plan, they're just moving the existing tanks, right?
It's a different fuel farm. That's what I understand.
Yeah, I thought
I don't
it was
remember
moving.
Back
that.
on.
Yeah, I think we were moving it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the tanks that we use today would be either relocated or removed, and the fuel farm would be out by the new terminal in the long-term plan.
Yeah, that's what I understood, but I assumed that they would be the same tanks. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe, yeah, could be. They're movable.
Depending on their condition,
Yeah.
that's the idea. Is actually moved. The fuel farm moves. There's all kinds of work involved in that. You know what that work is, but it would move. We wouldn't have two fuel farms established long
Right.
run.
Kelly?
Only thought process I had on the whole entire thing is kind of what Ricky said about kind of doing a trial run, dipping your toes in the water. 12,000 gallons seems like a lot. Being said, going back to what Colin said, you can interchange it, put a different fuel in it in the event that this doesn't pan out according to what the FAA suggests. That's how I always think things through, is jumping in the water all the way to 12,000 just seems like a lot. Sounds like a bigger expense. And then it's all panning out on what the FFA says or doesn't say. If the current fuel is working, I don't really see a reason to change it either. You don't fix things unless it's broken. You know, that's just the kind of old school mentality. Don't fix it unless it's broken.
But the airport is
They're-
losing money.
They're not currently buying fuel from the airport, though.
Right, so
Yeah.
that is, I mean, I think that's the problem that we're ultimately going to address here, is that the airport is losing its primary source of revenue because we don't have the fuel to serve our
Yeah.
primary customers.
Well, okay, hang on, we do. They have changed the fuel that they wanna
Okay,
use.
yeah,
So we do offer it, and we offer what we agreed to offer. They have decided to use different fuel that we don't have.
So this is just essentially accommodating to our best customer, essentially, to what
I
they're.
don't wanna say best customer, because
current
I wouldn't
customer.
say that to the jet pilots.
Yeah. Okay. cool. Yeah.
I'd be real careful with that.
Yeah, but it is accommodating. But does the jet pilots use this other fuel that they're wanting?
No, they
to?
use Jet A, but they generate
Okay.
a bigger revenue,
Got it.
so just be careful with that.
They're taking
all
more
of
to,
our clients are the best.
they're-
Right.
you know this, they're taking more at a time. It
Yeah.
benefits us when they come in. They take big chunks, and
Yeah.
it's good revenue for us, and we want to keep that. We're not, nothing changing there. What we don't see, and we're trying to be realistic with this, but also look into the future a little bit. We always want to be ahead of the curve, not behind it. We don't anticipate the outside market, outside of our largest consumer, consuming another 50,000 gallons of fuel. We don't think it's going to be that large, but is it large enough for us to do it? It's a guessing game at this point, I know. You've said that where the federal government is in terms of mandates and how they implement this and the infrastructure involved and the changes for it to be clearly impactful in a way that it makes this decision easy, probably not there. And if we're not confident in the market being available for this outside of our potentially largest consumer, is it worth it? Going with the smaller tank is an option. Identifying others that still meet a criteria that may be a federal standard at some point in the future. I don't know that that's clearly defined for unleaded right now. These are the things that we need to think about before we make this investment. And your input is valuable for that.
Hey, Mike, I got just a clarification. Earlier, if I'm not mistaken, you said that, looking at the possibility of redirecting some of the other money for some of the other projects to accommodate this. Did I understand that right? As far as the master plan and the terminal? And
Yeah, so
so on and so forth?
the bond money identifies airport improvements. We've talked at length about the terminal. We've talked about the secondary entrance becoming the primary entrance. We talked about the fuel farm, additional hangars. We talked about a number of things. All those contribute to airport improvements. All those would be allowed for bond funding. If we can knock as much of one out that provides the most impact at once, we want to do that. But if we think that the overall cost, and we talked about the terminal, if we think the overall cost of the terminal is outstripping even what we have today in bond funding, what do we do? How do we prioritize that? How do we do something, and even if it's smaller projects along the way that help us get closer to that goal, if that's not going to be an option?
Okay. And this is just personal opinion. I went to the airport for the first time in 1984, so I've been out there 42 years. And I've seen master plans come and go, and I've seen us make changes on the fly, and every one of them has blown up in our face. We just, we used to have a great air show out there back in the 90s, and then we built taxiways where you couldn't get airplanes where they needed to get anymore, so it kind of shut that stuff down. So we created our own paradox there where we lost business because we made decisions on the fly. And I'm not saying you shouldn't look at stuff like that, but I think we ought to be real careful deviating very much from that master plan, because I think a lot of that stuff in there will bring business to the airport that we don't currently have.
Sure, and then the challenge will be how do we fund those things? How do we get there? I'm kind of going on the fly because this is it's something new, and it's good for us to think about how the airport's going to evolve this way, and nothing ever goes according to plan. You try to put as many master plans together, and we've got it on the city side and so many other things. We deviate from that to fit with our environment, to do what we can do. If there was an additional tank that we install at the existing fuel farm, all three are going to go to the new location. Okay, we're going to follow that model. And if the market isn't going to drive, if we install unleaded, we serve unleaded, and the market's not driving that, and it's better for us to provide another fuel, another Jet A tank, or another low lead tank, that's what we need to do. Those are business decisions that we'll have to make in the future. All that to say, the initial cost to do it is significant, no doubt.
Right.
Is it worth it?
So the deliveries, I assume they're separate trucks because they're separate fuel, but I really don't know that.
Leaded fuel is separate. It
Yeah,
has to be
so
totally separate.
it would, if we got this tank and got the UL 94, it wouldn't affect the price that we get for the 100 low lead. Okay,
No,
just asking.
totally
I mean, that's a
independent.
pretty dumb question, but, like, they're separate, yes. So, this $1.28 that we're talking about, if you got a smaller tank, that number might
Go up.
increase, yes?
I'd like to see numbers on that though with a smaller tank. I just can't
I'd be
believe
curious
it's.
too. But I mean, is that going, are we gonna lose the advantage of that lower initial investment by paying a higher per delivery charge?
Yeah, I'd like to see how that
Yeah.
works out.
It's a big one because, I mean, I'm all for growth. We have limited money, everybody does. We need to use that wisely. I don't wanna look like we're giving something to one entity that's not shared by everyone. That's not a good look, to use taxpayer dollars, and it goes basically to the benefit of one entity at the airport.
And certainly what's driving this particular item is, what's the public benefit? Does the board have confidence that this would be a public benefit in some capacity? I know we can't exactly quantify that. What we can roughly quantify is that if the flight school were buying, as they had bought before from our fuel farm, we know generally what that
But
consumption
we know
would
what
be.
that looks like right now.
Yes.
With their fleet and their road taxes. If it was a different provider that had a different fleet, it could change tomorrow. So we can't anticipate everything.
We're sensitive to the price point. Does the price point now create a different relationship with us in the flight school that hurts the airport overall? That's certainly a factor too. All these things have an impact. We're not trying to stick a finger in the wind here, but we do need to make a decision, because where we are currently, we've got temporary agreements, we've got things that are not meant to be long-term. So we're trying to identify a long-term path, and this is an option.
Well, to me, it just boils down to the financials of it. If it's 15 to 20 years to recoup the investment, and it's anticipated that the current buyer would, 20 years is a long time.
It is.
And
It is.
just from personal experience traveling around the country, I don't see a lot of current demand for the unleaded fuel. Most people are still flying Continental and Lycoming engines that are using 100 low lead.
And we could be more aggressive with, not that we would, we could be more aggressive with a price point that shortens that time frame. Again, you get back to price sensitivity. Are we gonna outprice
But
any
then can they
reasonable
afford it?
business to operate?
Yeah, then it doesn't help anyone.
That's right. Everybody loses that way.
Yes.
There were some hands in the
Oh,
audience.
okay.
I don't know if
Do we
you
have
wanna-
somebody that wants to
wanna
come and
open up
talk? Yes.
Public comment or not?
Public comment, come on.
I'm Eric Jackemeyer. I'm the developer of Legends and Lofts, and hopefully a third project. I fly in a lot. I'm not an expert on unleaded fuels, but I have looked at it a lot, and your Continental can use it. My Turbo 182 can use it today. All I gotta do is pay for an STC. It's like $100. There's significant advantages to using unleaded. Plus, while we don't know what the federal government's going to do, they are going to get rid of leaded gas. Is it going to be in 5 years? Who knows? It's supposed to be in 2 or 3. But there's significant advantages for all of us flying small airplanes to do it right now. You can change your oil less. It's less wear and tear. My Turbo 182 has real valve problems. I don't lean like crazy. This gets rid of that problem. And part of it is chicken and egg. A lot of people don't use unleaded because you can't get it anywhere. You've got to go, I think the Dublin airport uses it. You might check with them, see what their demand is. I'm just saying there's more to it than just, well, gosh, who knows? I think it's a good deal. I like your idea of a smaller tank,
That's
because
right.
then you
I
could
say at
flip it at some point.
At some point, you make the flip and you're okay.
And,
don't have that
you
big
know, if
investment.
you've got a major customer right now who's not buying your product, I'm in private enterprise. I don't turn customers away. And, you know, as far as where it fits in master plans, one of my mentors always talked about, you know, if you're gonna do something, will that get me more rent? You know, for an apartment. You know, oh, we got a fancy pool. Okay, how much more rent does that get me? Well, you gotta figure that out. But I think having the option to have an unleaded fuel is going to be a lot more profitable than a new terminal.
So,
That's my opinion.
quick question, you mentioned that you can get it now at the Dublin airport. I'm not even sure where Dublin is, but you know where it is because are you thinking that it would bring people in that normally wouldn't land here to refuel specifically because they can get this unleaded gasoline?
Yeah, I think so.
That's interesting.
I mean, I fly out of Addison and Dallas, and so there's a whole bunch of us who fly to other airports to get fuel. And I get filled up every time I come here, and I tanker a full load back to Addison.
Why? Price?
Yeah, because it's $9
So
a
if it's
gallon there.
if it's $1.28 more, you're not gonna do it.
Yeah, I would, because it's gonna save me on
Well, you do the math. You'd make sure that
Wait,
it
what are
saved
you
you enough
trucking back?
to
I'm so
offset.
confused.
Yeah.
but
Gas in Dallas
the
area
difference
is
between
expensive.
buying fuel here right now and Addison's about $4
Oh,
a
sure.
gallon.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, but would I pay $1.50 more for unleaded fuel? Yeah, because it's gonna save my valve guides, it's gonna reduce my time before overhaul, it's gonna reduce my number of oil changes I take. And an oil change right now is $800, so.
If that were the case, then why aren't they everywhere? Like, why are
There's been
very few FBOs offering if it's such a great deal?
Because it takes
$450,000.
$450,000 that we have boards that are all looking at it right now, and you know,
Everybody's just
nobody wants to
waiting
be
for
first.
everybody else. Yeah.
But there's also been a lot of infrastructure issues, like having to ship it in
From far
Indiana.
away, yeah.
And there's also been a whole lot of capacity issues. I mean, there's only a couple of people who make the fuel, and so, you know, being able to batch up fast enough. And quite frankly, I think they've been really focused on the California market right now, because California is about to get rid of, they're trying desperately to get rid of leaded fuel. And, you know, no matter how you feel about it, leaded fuel's really a bad idea. But, because we spew a lot of lead out, which is not good for people. But it's mainly just, it's been an infrastructure issue, I think, because nobody wants to spend the money to put in a separate tank. There's a really good video by the AV Web guy who talks about unleaded fuels, so about the hype behind it and the unhype behind it. So worthwhile watching.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
that.
Yes, absolutely.
Learn something.
Good afternoon or good evening to the board, Madam Chairwoman. My name's Shannon Conklin, 3516 Churchill Drive, Nacogdoches, Texas. First, I'm gonna give a shout out to my date tonight, back in the back, Adeline, so thank you for being my date and being very patient with me. A few things. One, you know, I feel like the kid in the back of the classroom that finally knows the answer and then I can't answer. So there's a lot of things being discussed about my business, our business, and I want to answer some of those questions. First, I want to say thank you to the city. We love partnering with the city. We have always partnered with the city. Kathleen, you've been a huge supporter of ours from day one, and we're very grateful for that. We love our airport, and we want to be a great partner to our airport. The reason we're not using leaded fuel is for some of the reasons this gentleman just stated here, but we use it at a much higher frequency than the average pilot or aircraft. We have probably the highest utilization fleet in the world relative to Rotac motors, and that's coming directly from the Rotac factory in Technam directly. So we've been a testing ground, and with that comes some new things that we've learned, and a lot of what we've learned is the reliability around using leaded fuels in Rotac's motors is not good. It's not good for the environment, but it's damn sure not good for the components of an engine either. These engines are built on an automotive premise. They're not built to the standards or to the same specs that traditional aircraft engines are built. So leaded fuel is allowed in these engines, but it's not preferred, and they do it so they can have accessibility around the country for the same things we just talked about. Why isn't, you said it, why doesn't every airport have unleaded fuel? Infrastructure, I think you go through a whole litany of things and why they don't have it. But Rotax is catered to the broader aviation market, and so they've allowed through to use low lead. We had to get away from it for a few reasons. One, primary, is safety. We've had issues, and we are not going to take any unnecessary risk with our customers and our students and our staff flying engines that don't like 100 low lead. So we're going to switch. We came to the city and asked for options. And the options that you're hearing today are the same options that we got a year ago. It was going to be it was a significant investment. And the general consensus at the time was we're going to use Swift fuel. You're talking about $1.28 more. That's the spot price. That's not the retail price to the consumer. So if that fuel price is $3 to $4 more a gallon, it may not make sense to buy the fuel here. And that cost has to be passed on to somebody. We can't absorb it, so it has to go somewhere. And we do think that unleaded fuel, we would love to buy the fuel from the city. And we'd love the city to make money. We are not against that whatsoever. We want to be a good partner. But we can't take something that's going to be 75%, 50 to 75% more, and let that ride on the backs of students coming to Nacogdoches. They may not choose to come here. That cost may be the differentiator where they go somewhere else. San Angelo State, somewhere else. So we want to keep them here. We want to do the best that we can. I think there are other options for the fuel. I don't know what the tolerance, it becomes from a legal side with the city of what they want to do from, do you have to use an aviation sanctioned fuel? The Swift fuel, Mike and I have talked about this. I don't know what their specialty is. I don't know what they're doing that makes them a special fuel, but it's 94 octane, unleaded, zero ethanol fuel. There are refineries that build that or make that all day long that come at a significant discount to what Swift is trying to push. So I don't know all the hurdles there, but if we could find a solution where we can get fuel here at a competitive price that doesn't push us out of the market relative to what avgas would cost, we would absolutely buy it from the city. We didn't go buy this fuel and have to come up with our own solution because we didn't like working with the city of Nacogdoches. The city of Nacogdoches has been an incredible partner to ours, and we want that to continue to flourish. But safety is paramount, and we're going to, all day long, I think we all will acknowledge that safety comes first.
What specifically, what are the specific safety issues you're talking about?
I can give you a whole list of things. Everything.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I've got it on a sheet or on my phone back here. Every sludge buildup, lead buildup, components sticking, heads wearing out. It literally, lead is poison to an engine, a Rotax engine. Absolute poison. And to his point, you do have some benefits to it. You can change the oil twice. You don't have to change it, but I think every 100 hours as opposed to 50 hours.
Yeah.
But we had sensors going out. Major's here. He works with it. He can tell you the amount of issues that we've had out of engines. We have engines being studied right now at Rotax because of the lead issues.
That they pulled out of y'all's planes
Yeah, we had an engine blow, and
during flight?
From the fuel.
we're not
Be
100%
real careful.
sure, but
Yeah.
it's a stuck head
Yeah,
and lead buildups in these engines. You scope these engines; they're full of lead. So we had to immediately move away from it. I'm not going to sit here and say if there's a 1% chance that I can have somebody get hurt, and it could be lead. Well, you damn right I'm going to change it. I have to. We have to
It sounds
minimize.
like the cost is also, really close to the issue of safety as well.
Nothing's.
Because we won't be able to attract the students. Is that what you're saying?
No. Well, cost and safety are not even on the same parallel. Those are completely different. Safety is always paramount. What I'm saying on cost is if you take I can go procure the fuel at a similar rate that we were buying the fuel for the avgas for here in Nacogdoches. And we're buying it retail. We're not a wholesale buyer.
So that's where you're getting the fuel now?
Yep.
Okay.
but it's not aviation fuel.
It's aviation spec, the same as Swift. There's no difference, it's just branding.
It is different. It's not aviation fuel, and you are a commercial provider. I think that is an issue for sure. And I worry about the cost difference, that it won't work. Like if we buy the tank and we gotta take 20 years to be able to afford the tank, and it's too expensive for the fleet, are you gonna go back to 100 low lead?
No, we're gonna use the fuel, we're gonna use unleaded fuel moving forward, and we're using fuel that is sanctioned by Rotax Motors.
But it's not for commercial use.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Okay, but it's not aviation grade.
What is aviation grade? Are you an expert on this?
No, I'm not, but I have read
Okay.
a little bit. I have read a little bit,
We can-
so.
Okay.
Is y'all's long-term,
Is the fuel spec'd by the
It's just, it's a
Yeah.
spec, it's an, I don't know what the technical term, MDS,
Which is, I
MSDS
think,
sheet?
fine for a Rotex mom and pop that has it. I mean, we're putting in a Rotex. I like them. Not everybody does. And I think that spec is totally fine for my airplane because I'm not putting 150 kids in it. I'm putting just regular GA people. I am not for hire. So I
You
think.
recommend us going back to 100 low lead?
No, no, you run your business the way you want.
We run within the specs of the manufacturer.
Well, it
a hell
also,
of a
I
lot
have the
safer.
POHs here, and they say 100 low lead can be put in them.
And where did you get the POH?
FAA.
No,
You can,
took it, it's our property.
actually got it from SFA.
But that's
It's
a
our property.
Well, the Rotax, the specs for the Rotax.
You're citing
engine-
HCH policies.
The specs for the Rotax engine are available from the FAA. It says
Yes.
clearly on there.
Yeah.
Of what you can use.
is y'all's long-term plan to stick with the Rotax engine?
For now, yes, because it's hard to change out a fleet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So just, you can run 100 low lead in a jet engine. The manufacturer will allow that. You can run in a PT6 all day. They recommend Jet A. You can run 100 low lead in a Rotax engine. They recommend this fuel, to answer your question.
But they recommended it when you bought the fleet too then,
Sure.
They
because
give
it
you-
hasn't changed.
No,
It's
no.
recommended because
Yeah.
it's universally available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
But it wasn't when the fleet came here. I'm just saying.
I'm wondering, as far as the kind of, we're getting off track here
Yeah,
on
we
the
are.
agenda, I think, a little bit. I think we've maybe jumped into a little bit more of the 2E part.
Okay.
Do we need to, just for the sake, I mean, you're running the show, y'all are running the show. Do we need to,
If there's more, and thank you for sharing those comments, Shannon. If there's more discussion among the board in general about outside of the flight school, the market or other potential users, and I thought the comments from the gentleman just a minute ago were really productive and useful for the conversation. In general, we're talking about all airport consumers or long term. If we as an airport, we as a city need to invest in this because unleaded is the future. May not be the future today. Is it right today to invest in that if it's 15 years out or 20 years out as opposed to 5 or 10? Maybe if there's any more feedback or discussion in terms of that, we can talk specifics about the flight school and its operations in that subsequent agenda item.
Okay.
so you're not opposed to buying fuel from the city? If the city decided to put in this tank, and spend the money, the taxpayers' money, you as one of the operators of the business are not gonna be opposed to purchasing fuel from the city. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're concerned today over the price difference between what you're paying and what the Swift fuel.
Yes, sir.
Is that a complete summary?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, it comes down to economics 101 at the end of the day. I mean, if we can procure the fuel another way, the same type of fuel another way, then it makes sense. So if the city can come up with a solution, and we don't know what, he got a spot price, but I mean, who knows what the ultimate difference is, and we need to evaluate that. And I think, Taylor, you said it, or maybe it was Ricky, but talk about what are the, there's no financials here. There's a lot of presumptions that HCH is gonna buy the fuel, and this large investment on the taxpayer's dime is on, rests on HCH spending X amount of money with purchasing the fuel. And we can't stand here and just say, if it's competitive where we can use it, and it doesn't have to, I mean, I'm not saying, it needs to be in the ballpark of what avgas or the fuel that we're paying for now.
Where's it coming from now? Just out of
It
curiosity.
comes from a Sunoco race dealer, it's a Sunoco wholesaler. The city knows, they've called them, talked to them too, yeah.
So if we were to put in the tank with the taxpayer money, ours would have to come from Swift? I don't, yes?
That's a type of fuel, I don't.
Okay, I thought that was the company
No,
that
ma'am.
brought it.
No,
Okay.
ma'am. Is it? Or is it the oh, it is, okay.
It's the company who did all the formulations for the fuel, is Swift. There's also a group called GAMI out of Oklahoma who actually came out with theirs first. And there's the whole FAA thing.
Would you mind? Thank you.
Plan on getting back to the But no, so there's a couple of different companies who produce unleaded gas, and the way the setup is right now, you have to get an STC from every one of them to use their fuel, and so it's really screwed up. I did send a link to the little video that I would recommend all of you take a look at. He can distribute it to everybody later on. But I mean, the big problem is this fuel hasn't been available, so you know they're ramping up. What the thought is, from what everything I've read about, is that price delta is going to come down.
Yeah.
The problem is you've only got 2 people making the fuel, and they can't make enough of it as it is, so they're
Like,
pricing
are we
it as
gonna
a
have
premium.
trouble getting it if we put the tank in?
Well, we were given some assurances from Titan that would be available if we're ready to buy it.
Okay.
Again,
Supply is is estimated to only get better.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
because
It's
there's,
ramping up.
I got you.
Again, it's that chicken and egg thing. They don't want to make 4 billion
And-
gallons of this stuff if there's one supplier in Dublin, Texas. But, you know, as more airports come on, then they start ramping it back up.
Okay.
And I think there's even a third manufacturer. These three are racing to be the first to come up with an FAA approved
Right.
Unleaded fuel that's certified for all aircraft, or all piston aircraft,
can't
or,
they
or
just
most
use-
piston.
Why can't they just use what they're using now? What is the difference between what they've come up with and what already exists?
Octanes are a little bit, I mean, he's probably primarily talking about 100 octane, not 94. which
Yeah.
is more like automobile gas.
Right. Different engines. You can't use MoGas in most high-end light
And Swift is
companies.
working on a 100R or something.
yeah, there's
And I
That's
think-
the one they're trying to get certified that will work for most piston aircraft. The UL-94, I think, is STC for as much as 60% of the piston aircraft. So they're all
What is
racing.
the shelf life? Like, if we got the
That's what I'm
12,
saying, about 6 months or so.
6 months, like, if we got the 12,000 gallon tank, are we gonna use 12,000 gallons before the shelf life runs out? I don't know.
Well, I mean, at 50, if they buy the 50,000 gallons a year that we anticipate, yeah, it'll
That's
turn
4,000
over
gallons a month.
six or 8 times a year.
And that's consistent with what they were buying. Okay, that's kind of the reasoning behind what we proposed. Could it be a smaller tank? Could we differentiate that to lower that price sensitivity? Those could all be considerations. I think we're at the very early stages of saying, is this even good for us right
Yeah.
now?
Well, something else to possibly consider. I don't know if being one of the first ones to offer this and appease the federal government would get us extra points for projects going forward. I don't know, but
It hasn't been a
would-
factor in
it wouldn't
decision
hurt.
making yet, but
In
I
my
did want to.
business, it wouldn't hurt.
Sure, I appreciate that. And I
Okay.
did want to add that the links to the draft transition plan and the Eagle document that the FAA has put out speaks to the challenges, the prevalence of the current unleaded, that there's only 2-3 really makers that aren't necessarily graded in the same way that the other fuel is, because it's just not widely distributed. The market, the industry hasn't sort of grasped their hands around it yet. They're exploring those things. That's what the plan is. It's a transition plan. How long that would take, nothing works according to the FAA's or any federal government's initial plan. It's usually a bit longer than that, and we're anticipating that as well. Is this the right time? We know there's potentially a consumer. we're assuming that there's a consumer for that. We know who that is. They're at our airport. We put the tank in. We would ultimately have and try to have a price point that accommodates that operation where they're buying. If we don't have that as a reliable consumer, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But if that consumer is buying, if flight school is buying that unleaded fuel, that enough gives us some justification. If it's a smaller tank, if we shorten that amortization to cover the capital costs, yeah, it makes sense. What about the unknown is that larger market? The unknown is the industry headed this direction anyway in a time frame that works for us to do this now?
Back last summer, I made a phone call to the Waco Airport. The FBO there, Texas Aero, serves this Swift UL 94 UL to the Baylor flight school. They're running Rotax in their fleet. They're, you know, according to the representative I talked to, they gladly pay the upcharge. I think just the savings and maintenance was more than offset the extra cost. The only difference in our operation and theirs is that the Waco Airport had a third tank and a third truck from a second FBO that went out of business. So their infrastructure cost was, you know, near zero. So that's the difference. But other than that, he said he doesn't sell it to a lot of transients right now. It's available, I believe, full surf to transients during business hours. But
So it's only on a truck. You have to have. It's
I
not
believe
on
so.
six-
But they're buying gobs of it there for the Baylor Flight Schools, buying gobs of it.
I mean, this is really way off, and maybe we should just move on. But what about trucks? I mean, can we get enough trucks to be able to handle what they're wanting? I know
Like
we
a
can
trial?
rent trucks.
You're talking about like a trial, like,
Yeah.
okay, just to see how much is moved?
Yeah, I mean, I
Rather
don't,
than a ground tank, just
yeah.
operating from trucks.
I don't know if that's even an option. I don't know how big. I don't know how many gallons are in those trucks. I have no idea.
Be a question for Titan. I mean, I don't know if Titan does test runs like that because, I mean,
You guys know, I mean,
You already
within
know
a
how much you're gonna
pretty
buy.
close margin, how much fuel you're gonna need for the upcoming semester.
Yes, sir.
You know, one comment I want to make, I've ran a business for 10 years that has a 2-year shelf life, protein. And similar situation where if I have a new customer, he or she wants to order product, I always tell them, 50% down if I'm going to order all this because I don't want it sitting in my warehouse and it going bad. So similar situation with this is that maybe we can find some sort of happy medium with the current customer who needs this product to work out a deal where you guys help us, we'll help you scenario. Just because the risk is putting up money, you're not sure if it's gonna, let alone, we don't know if we can afford it. One reason why you do something like that, but it also, because it's a guaranteed sale. I'm gonna go ahead and manufacture the product for sure because I know a customer's gonna buy it. He already committed to it. He's ready for it. I'm gonna send it to him as soon as it's done, but at least I know I have his commitment. Just an idea for this situation.
Or contributing to the capital expenditure.
Well, that's my point, is that I'm not gonna order a bunch of product for a new customer,
Because-
but this is not a new customer, but for
And-
my
and I
situation.
If they
think-
put it in their own tanks, they're gonna have to follow the same, I mean,
Well, I didn't say their own tanks, I said for this new
Well,
type of product that.
the
that we need.
expense to put it in is gonna be
Yeah.
the same whether we do it, whether HCH does it, or some other company,
Correct.
right? So, I mean, sharing in that expense might not be,
Some of that may
That's my
feed our next, our
Yeah.
subsequent agenda item,
agree.
but I'll just add one more that I know this is something in the back of everyone's mind. It is ours too. The volatility of the oil and gas market is always going to be a factor. There will be times where it's relatively stable. Recently, it's been relatively volatile, and we don't want to sell fuel at a lower price than we paid for it. That just won't happen. The margins may shift from time to time, and we want to be competitive. We absolutely want to be. It doesn't serve us to not be competitive. If we sell $10 fuel and no one buys a gallon, we're doing it wrong, clearly. But we also have to make our money back. So what that price looks like, I can't predict even 6 months from now. What we can do is utilize the kind of the same methods we're utilizing now. We're looking at our competitors. We're looking at what their prices are. We're looking at some value above the wholesale. Typically, it's in the 1 to 150 range above wholesale, and that's net revenue for the airport. That serves everything we do. If we're buying unleaded fuel, whatever that looks like, from whomever, at a higher price in general than our avgas and our Jet A, it's going to be a higher price to the retail customer. It's just going to be higher.
I would leave you with just one thing, which is you've been really focused on this 15 to 20 year payback. What's your payback on your terminal? That never pays itself off. You're going to be investing $450,000 in something that makes you money. It makes you money,
Swimming pool.
right? New terminal building, nice and pretty, and I love them. I'm an architect as well. I love cool. I was in Aston Aviation this morning at Texas A&M because I was doing some charity flying. Beautiful terminal. Does it make them extra money? Nah, not really. I mean, if they were some other FBOs on the field where I'm flying my Gulfstream in, which fancy one am I going to go to? Maybe it makes a difference. Doesn't really make any difference to me, right? So this is an opportunity to invest in your future, and I think it's to my eyes, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you've got a customer who says he's got to have it. It's going to be a mandate. It will be a mandate. I don't know if it's next year, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, but it's going to be a mandate. And then everybody's going to be scrambling trying to get it in. And it's going to be a lot more than 450,000.
They may be federally funded at that point too.
Potentially. And
They may offer money to put them in at that point, and we spent $500,000 that we could have gotten from the feds.
And that's a good point. I'll add to that comment that we are seeking confirmation that we could potentially utilize some unspent ramp grant money to defray the capital cost of the installation of a new fuel tank. Partially, it's not going to fully cover that cost. We don't have 100% confirmation on that, and we may not be able to. The maintenance of it down the road, probably so, the way that the grant is structured now, but we are looking at other elements. We're not simply trying to just throw bond money at it and call it a day. We're looking at all approaches because that's how we do pretty much funding any capital cost at the airport. With the business plan, we're not putting all our eggs in that business plan basket, but that will inform us on what that capital cost recovery looks like, how we bake that into the fees that we charge and the services we provide. So it all kind of works together, but we're certainly not wanting to continue to lose money in the long term.
Jack, you had your hand raised earlier. Do you want to come up?
Whenever y'all are ready. Don't want to get in the way there.
Shannon, did you want to add anything else? I don't want to send you away, but Jack's been
Hey,
patiently.
yeah.
$500,000 investment contingent upon us buying it. We need to, there's more to the story. We need to see a cost model on this. If we're going to commit to something like that, need to understand what the economics look like. So I wouldn't want the city to make a bad decision on something. It's our money too, so. Thank you.
I think you had more public comment.
Anybody else? Oh, brother.
Name and address for the record. Name and address.
Jack Gainer, 4890 West State Highway 7 here in Nacogdoches. Looking wonderful as always.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, as dapper as he can possibly be. Nevertheless, a quick search while I was just sitting in the chair of local airports that do actually service unleaded aviation fuel. There's I don't know who owns them, but it looks like a private group of unleaded avid flyers that support unleaded aviation fuel. Shows there's only 4 sites in Texas that actually provide unleaded aviation fuel. I can't confirm that the site is completely accurate because it did not list Dublin, but Dublin does have it. None in the Houston area, one in Midland, Waco, that does very well, but they have a partner school there, and one down towards Brownsville somewhere. So what we see when we get our Oshkosh transients is a small number. And I think that the aviation world is moving more towards road tax. We're finding more and more population. Sling is doing them. There's one of those on the field. I don't know if his is running a road tax or not. It is. So the light sport aircraft industry is getting ready to change with Mosaic. There's all kinds of changes coming. that I think would support an unleaded fuel point. I don't know whether that's worth anything or not, but there's quite a bit of information out there that I didn't even realize existed until I was sitting in the audience and heard the gentleman talk about Dublin Airport. But like I said, the closest one that's on the record there is Waco. They do very well with theirs. Nothing in the Houston area, and possibly one in Dublin. And then the last thing I want to do is correct the record on a statement that HCH's information was being used by the board members. Stephen F. Austin provides digital copies of all of the POHs to all of our instructors. Ms. Gaynor serves as an instructor at Stephen F. Austin, so the information that Ms. Gaynor has was obtained through Stephen F. Austin in every right and manner she should. Thank you.
Anybody else? Name and address.
Major Dibble, 1411 Garner Street, Nacogdoches. I would like to say the website is called flyunleaded.com. I'm making the trip to Oshkosh. I fly unleaded as well. And it gives you routes to fly to get unleaded fuel. There's 4 in state Texas, like you said. Dublin is listed on there, I believe. And Waco the same way. You call them ahead, you can get fuel there. And my journey will be based on which airports have unleaded fuel. Those will be where I stop, because I cannot fly 100 low lead.
Very nice.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. I think we have beat this one to death. I think we should move on for the sake of moving on. Do you need anything else from us, Mike? What would you like?
I think it's undecided. Is that a safe assumption?
I mean, it seems like it is. I don't think it's dead in the water. I think we need more information. I don't think anybody is super opposed to it. I worry about the look of we're doing something with taxpayer money for one entity at the airport. That worries me. But if it's the future and we need to get ahead of it, then I think we should do that. But I think we need more information. How do you feel, board?
I was enlightened by some comments from the audience that gave me more confidence that it might be a good financial decision. If the numbers make sense, then I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, I could agree too. I mean, if people are making stops for this specific type of fuel, then that does change a little bit. I mean, I don't like that last
need to see
person
the
said.
numbers.
That doesn't-
Agreed.
Yeah,
If the
that comes
numbers
down to
make
the
sense.
numbers at the same time, though.
Yeah, we
But
need
that
more
is interesting to know that people make stops based off of that. That's interesting to know.
And I think we'd be we'd be in trouble if we made a decision based solely on what the price of that fuel is gonna be
Yeah.
today. If it's coming in the future, if it's mandated by the FAA, that price is just gonna go through the floor. I mean, as more people make it, as the supply goes up, everybody knows. I mean, demand's gonna go up, supplies go up. We're gonna see a decrease in the price, so the price difference between what HCH is paying now for theirs versus the Swift is probably gonna become a lot more manageable, I would imagine.
There's a comment about more information. Can you be specific?
Ricky, what do you need?
I'd like to see options for a smaller tank, because you're looking 10 years down the road, you're gonna have 2 tanks and you're still only gonna be using one of them.
So you're saying smaller and see?
If
Yeah.
it's,
Contrast.
contrast a smaller tank, something that, like I say, once unleaded fuel becomes the norm, you're gonna use one unleaded fuel tank.
Right. Switch is
I'd
what
like
you
to
mean.
see, I'd like to see a financial breakdown. And just pick today's market on both of them and build it on that. I mean, I know it's gonna change. We all know it's gonna change. But let's see what the payout is. See what y'all propose. You know, because building on, as we've all recognized, the back of HCH Aviation, basically it comes down to how much money is the city gonna gain per year, HCH buying the fuel, and how long does that take to pay off the $450,000? Because basically, like you were saying earlier, all your eggs in one basket.
For now.
That's the plan, yeah. So I'd just like to see the financials.
So pro forma amortization.
Yeah.
Well, if we were doing capital cost recovery just based on the fuel price alone.
Yeah.
I think we'll touch on some of that in the later agenda item it'll probably add some clarity to some of that, and if we need more, we'd be happy to provide that.
Okay, are we safe to move forward? Everyone's
Yes,
in
ma'am.
agreement? Okay, so let's go to D, advise on proposed fixed base operator agreement for aircraft rental, including consideration of any related variance requests for Drew Aero LLC. So Drew wants the regular FBO, he has a rental aircraft, a 150, 152, what is it? And is this just the regular one that everyone gets, like Milam? Is there anything different?
Just the
No
names.
bathrooms, no
Ju-
parking?
Just the names, yeah, the same one Milam got and the Shives got before that. Of course, it, excuse me, it has a section in there where, you're granting a variance as the Airport Board of Adjustments. So here in a little bit, if you're agreeable to it, you'll put those hats on and grant that variance.
Do you need us to vote on it?
You will need to formally grant that variance.
It's the restrooms?
And then you would need to come back around and offer any other advice on the agreement itself.
Okay,
We can switch that, do the variance, I don't have any issue with it.
I don't either.
What do you want?
A vote? Somebody asked for,
As the Board of Adjustments.
yeah.
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance as requested.
Second.
All right, we have first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. That was easier
What
than
about
the
the
other one.
agreement, any advice on the agreement itself?
It's the same agreement.
It's the same one that
Yeah.
Island had, yes? With the,
So your advice is to accept the agreement?
Yes.
yes.
What was on, that's actually what we were on. We
That's
weren't
the
on
agenda
the
item.
variance thing yet, so.
That's what I thought.
You formally do that then?
Okay, I'm so
Accept the
confused. Help me.
agreement.
Accept the agreement for the Drew Aero LLC? Yes. What do you want me to do?
We need a motion for that.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Sorry, I got lost.
Ricky made the motion, who seconded?
John.
John,
Thanks.
We had to approve the variance and then.
okay, I got you. Okay, so now we're on E, yes?
On those two actions?
I am. Jerry, are you good?
We're good?
Yep.
Okay, so E, advise on proposed fixed base operator agreement for flight instruction with HCH Aviation LLC. John, what are you gonna do?
I should abstain from this vote.
Are you recusing yourself?
I'm recusing myself.
Are you leaving? Are you staying?
I'll stay if it's okay with council. I can leave if I need to.
Well, I brought this, I mean, it's up to you.
It's not required that you leave. You know, I kind of make that recommendation. Just because your presence could potentially influence the.
bathroom.
It's completely up to you.
Okay.
Just keep your phone and we'll take
Takes me a minute, you know.
Okay. Okay, so item E. This one's a little hard because we don't really know what we're gonna do with, C. But let's start our discussion. What do we see here? What do we think?
We want to present on it first.
Yeah, do you wanna present what
I'll-
you want, Mike, or you?
I appreciate it, Colin, kind of open this by
Given some history.
give a brief summary of what we're doing here, and then the history is an important factor here. So,
Okay,
and he's got it more than I do,
you're getting dumped on. Go, Colin.
and I will fill in the gaps, Colin.
Okay, excuse me. So HCH Aviation is proposing to continue operating flight instruction at our airport. The flight instruction involves multiple instructors and aircraft for rent, operates 7 days a week, and is based in multiple hangars across the airport. By city ordinance, this commercial activity requires a fixed base operator agreement between the operator and the city. The proposed agreement would replace an existing FBO agreement for the same services as well as an existing temporary allowance letter due to the request of HCH to provide their own fuel in lieu of purchasing the fuel we sell, as stipulated in the original current agreement. The city is seeking board input and recommendations on the proposed agreement, and the board will be informed of the items still being discussed between the city and HCH at the time of the meeting. So I'd like to provide a little bit of history, particularly, this really kind of does revolve around the fuel, and then I'll provide a little bit of data to help you guys fill in some gaps. And again, this is just from my perspective as airport manager, and I'm sure we'll hear other perspectives on this. So I want, when this original FBO agreement was entered, which was in your packet, by the way, with the flight school, their instructional fleet consisted of Piper aircraft with conventional aircraft engines that ran exclusively on 100 low-lead avgas. And those aircraft were eventually phased out and replaced with the 15 Tecnam aircrafts they have today, which have the less conventional Rotax engine. And we've kind of discussed some of this, so I'll race through it. They're able to run this both 100 low-lead avgas that we sell and also unleaded fuels. And they ran them off of our fuel for the first few years, including the full fiscal year of 24-25. A little over a year ago, the flight school came to us with their concern. At that time, the concern voice was the extra maintenance from using the leaded fuel was basically overwhelming them. As was my take on how they explained it. I explored alternatives through our fuel vendor, was not able to secure a source of unleaded avgas through them at that time, nor did we have the funding budgeted for the additional infrastructure to offer a third fuel. And so some time went by, the flight school circled back last summer with the same concerns, mostly around maintenance costs, and formally requested that they either be allowed to sell fuel with unleaded automotive fuel, is where they were leaning at the time, or that the city source and sell them an unleaded fuel. And around August of last summer, the city formulated 3 scenarios for this. The scenario where the city provides the unleaded fuel, which was by then available through the city's fuel supplier, was rejected for various reasons. Neither party was comfortable with the second scenario of the city stocking and pumping unleaded automotive gas for aviation for different reasons, but it wasn't acceptable for either. So while we worked to figure out a more permanent solution, it was agreed that the flight school would be temporarily allowed to sell fuel subject to numerous stipulations, including executing an amended FBO agreement with the city, as shown in the final extension of the set allowances that was included in the agenda packet. So you got a copy of what was the third and final extension to that temporary allowance. These stipulations grew as time extensions were added to the temporary allowance, mostly due to the additional research into fueling safety and regulations, and partly through the experience of the self-fueling itself, and the later request to add mobile fueling to the mix. Tenant self-fueling at this scale is uncharted waters for our airport, at least in recent memory, and it's not thoroughly addressed in the current ordinances or other airport governing documents. So we're kind of just flying by the seat of our pants with some of this. But we made up an effort to try to react to the request. A couple of extensions were granted to the temporary self-fueling allowance that replaced, as the replacement FBO and ground lease agreements were ironed out to their current state. In addition to fuel-related updates, the amended agreement contains various other updates, including the slimming of the FBO categories at which this agreement will cover. If HCH wishes to offer additional commercial services FBO categories at the airport, we would propose to consider those under separate FBO agreements. That's a little different than the original one that is being replaced. I just, again, want to offer a little, I'm going to give you a little bit of data to help your perspective and hopefully fill in some of the gaps from the airport perspective. So airports that accept federal grants are required to be as self-sustaining as possible. It's literally a written federal requirement. And it's the goal of the airport to become and then stay self-sustaining. From the city accounting perspective, the airport is considered an enterprise fund, meaning what the airport earns, it keeps. And it should operate much like a private business would operate. And that differs from other departments at the city. We have other enterprise fund departments, but there's others that aren't. But we are one. Whether we are fully self-sustained or not, we're one. The airport has traditionally received fund transfers from other city accounts to balance its operating budget. As far back as I can see, I see these fund transfers to subsidize the airport. And so, however, the airport's operating budget broke even last fiscal year by itself. If you take out the transfers, mostly through increased fuel sales and fuel sales margins, and through strict budgeting. So we basically got there last year. We got there. Well, on the operating budget. Capital purchases and capital projects are kind of in a different fund, and we're not quite there. Actually, we did make a big capital budget purchase last year, even with the budget with the revenue we made. So, but I can't sit there and say that we can cover all that yet. But the operating budget, which is salaries and utilities and, well, the wholesale fuel and just pencils, pens, everything, mower gas, everything, that was covered last year. So we were getting there. So since the flight school started, we've only added one part-time airport position at the airport. Last fiscal year, about 92% of our airport revenue was generated through fuel sales. Fuel is and has been the airport's revenue model for many years, and to meaningfully change it would take significant changes, investment, and time. While we hope the proposed airport business plan, which is later on our agenda, will yield some ideas for diversifying airport revenue sources, it's not likely that fuel will be replaced as the main revenue source anytime soon. Fees for FBOs here are often even tied to fuel sales related to the FBO where applicable. That's how important fuel sales are. We tend to tie FBO fees to fuel sales. It's all about driving those fuel sales. So total 100 low-lead avgas fuel sales for last fiscal year were 65,000 gallons. That's total 100 low-lead. And again, the fly school had not converted it during that fiscal year period. So it was right after that. On a side note, Jet A sales were 67,000. So between the two fuels, it was 132,000 gallons of fuel. So they're about even, and that's a new thing. I mean, that's largely attributed to the growth of the flight school. Total revenue last fiscal year for both types of fuel was approximately $640,000, and the wholesale cost of that fuel was approximately $385,000, which yielded a total margin of approximately $255,000, or $1.92 a gallon. So we'll get on. I'll mention the margin on the fuel we sell to the flight school, but it's lower than that. So our margin on jet fuel is higher. And the market just allows that. It's we're in total control of our prices, but we're still competing with other airports. So our pricing is a weird mix of what we pay, our typical margin, and what our competition's doing, and that's extremely volatile right now. But even last year, I hardly even changed the price last year. Mm-hmm. You still have to keep your competition in mind.
And I'll add to that. Our Jet A consumers are our absolute prototypical choice consumers. They have choice. They can go a lot of places. So staying competitive.
They tanker a lot of fuel. They can.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead. So the flight school purchased about 37,000 gallons of fuel from us last fiscal year, which was a little over half of our avgas fuel sales and a little over a quarter of overall fuel sales at the airport when you combine Hunter, Lola, and Jet. And again, their transition happened after this reporting period. Our fiscal year ends September 30th. The average, the flight school is projected to increase operations to consume about 50,000 gallons this fiscal year when you combine what they purchased for the city there at the beginning and what they self-provide. And I'm sure they can update us on that later. But that was kind of an agreed upon a number back in the summer when we were analyzing all this.
Can you say that again? They use 38, but they're anticipating.
With enrollment growth and increases in efficiencies and maintenance and operations, I think they felt very comfortable at 50,000, and I wouldn't be surprised if he came to tell you it's more. But that was the number that was shared with me last summer as they learned their class size.
And that's consistent with other conversations between 40 and 50,000.
Yeah.
And always leaning toward the higher end if they continue to grow is the number that we're working off of as fuel estimated or at least assumed fuel sales. Speaking back to the buying the tank and assuming what our consumers would be buying from us if we were selling unleaded.
So there's only so many hours in a day and so long you can fly one airplane. So are they buying more airplanes to get to this 50,000?
I'll have to let them address that. I gave you what my
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I speculated just now on a few things that might be leading to this increased consumption, but I think it'd be more appropriate to let Mr. Conklin answer that.
Okay.
So the average margin, which is retail price minus the wholesale cost, for the prepay 100 low lead average avgas fuel sold by the city last fiscal year and up to the time the flight school started temporary self-fueling was about $1.50 a gallon was our margin. Fairly consistent for the year. So, and so that would be, at the 50,000 projected gallons that if we held the same $1.50, and the market may not have held that $1.50 the way it is now, so bear with me on that, but it was consistent. If we just use last year as a snapshot, that's $75,000 in revenue, aside from what we paid for the fuel. We can do anything we want with that, and that's payroll and lawnmowers and electricity and all that stuff. So I've already kind of gone over. We touched on. I had notes here on the spot price I got back in March. Again, it was $1.28 difference then. I will say when I looked into it last summer, it was closer to $2. So it is coming down. Even Titan was like, wow, when they gave me the price, it's come down a lot. So we continue to see that price come down, and I truly feel that if things keep going this way, and unleaded fuel doesn't become the next electric car thing, that we'll see that price come down. What that would mean, is for a margin, we haven't decided what the margin on that would be if we were to stock it. It could be we could hold the $1.50 that has been working for our budget. We could go up to $2. We could even consider an infrastructure like Mike mentioned earlier, an infrastructure recapture fee as part of that to help offset the cost of that infrastructure, and which is that fee would target the very ones using it rather than everyone else. So we wouldn't have to spread that cost out amongst everything else. So the flight school accounted for 69% of the approximately 40,000 landings and takeoff operations at our airport last fiscal year, which was 27,602 operations, according to our ADSB data provided by our on-site tracking system. And I've
70%?
let's call it 69%, yeah, of 70%, yeah, of the operations on the runway were from the flight school. So they are by far our biggest. Yeah, they're by far our biggest user, and we can dial that into each plane with our software. So it's pretty impressive, actually. Both the number of operations and the software, but and just to kind of leave you lastly, just because we mentioned our jet customers, you know, for comparison, the airport's top 3 corporate-based aircraft bought a combined 21,222 gallons of jet fuel from us. So
3 airplanes?
just
Just
3
the top
airplanes,
3.
yeah. And that accounted for 16% of the total fuel sold at the airport. And those 3 aircraft had a combined 144 operations, takeoffs and landings. So 0.004% of total airport operations. So
0.004?
that's if my calculations are correct. So just a little perspective. I mean, if you're trying to tie usage of the airport to fuel sales, like Mike said, the jets are definitely our most lucrative customers, but Avgas has almost come to equal the jet fuel sales. So, and I pointed that out earlier in my data. So, we expect jet A sales to take off as the golf resort develops, but that's just speculation at this point. So. So is there any other questions or data related to?
Let me jump in, Colin, real quick and just kind of supplement what you're saying. I do want to call the board's attention to some key factors in this proposed agreement. Colin mentioned that this proposed FBO is primarily Category A. This isn't multi-category FBO agreement. In fact, and it has a lot to do with how this agreement is structured. We didn't want to complicate it with additional categories. There may be other interests in HCH wanting to explore some of these other category services. We'd like to deal with that in separate agreements. So this proposed FBO is primarily Category A, flight instruction, and there is an exhibit that speaks to some of the additional regulations, particularly to how the fuel flowage would work. If HCH continues with its fuel operations separate from buying from the airport, these additional regulations kind of help us meet our standard in how we manage the tank, how hazardous fuel gets transported back and forth on airport property, and some of the rules and agencies, TCEQ, EPA, others that we have to answer to or answer to through TxDOT or through the FAA. Helps us meet that standard as well. So those are additional requirements you wouldn't have seen in previous agreements that are stipulated here, primarily to help kind of nail down that portion of the service. If we allow them to continue sort of self-serving with their own unleaded fuel, that gives us some additional authority to help kind of regulate that at the airport, consistent with everything else we do. I'll call your attention to item 3. That's kind of the hinge or the trigger in speaking to some of the previous discussions we had about the unleaded fuel tank, where if we are selling unleaded fuel, here's their conditions. Here's what they would be paying in terms of a fee. If we're not selling unleaded fuel, here are their conditions. Here is the fee that they'd be paying. Here's what's driving the airport's revenue primarily. So. It is bolded. I'll call your attention to that. It's an important part of the agreement. The other components, and Colin, tell me if I'm wrong, they're roughly the same, but those are some of the major changes driving the impetus for wanting to amend this and renew this FBO.
How were these numbers arrived at? The category number 3.
We're talking about the $50 and the 15 cents.
Yes. How'd you come up with those numbers?
The $50 is a little bit less than the per month aircraft. The credit in terms of buying the gallons of fuel, the 200 gallons, is consistent with what we've incorporated with HCH prior agreements, I believe. I think that's in the
Well, the
proposed.
prior agreement was $100 a month for category A.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the $50 is less than that. I would say that change is primarily based on the fleet number that they have, the large aircraft. We're just treating that differently. That's more of a benefit to the flight school because of the number of aircraft that are on the ground.
But
And you said it
but they
was
use more too.
70% of the usage.
Yeah. we hit it at
And
the same time.
200 gallons, if they're buying our fuel, is what we expect them to buy. It's a credit. If they weren't buying it, we'd have a different model. We can always update that to reflect other agreements. And that's certainly a recommendation that can come from the board, but that was the reasoning behind that.
Will $50 always be cheaper than buying 200 gallons worth of fuel?
I think it will.
I mean, in every scenario,
Even $100.
unless it just wasn't flying? I mean, if you were saying we're making $1.50 on the margin on the fuel, times 200 gallons, that's $350.
Right, so then they don't pay the 50.
Now remember, this is a condition that they are buying our fuel,
Right.
Right.
and there's no alternative to buying our fuel.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Less active aircraft owners, this becomes more of a factor when they're not buying as much fuel. Consistent with how the flight school would be operating, that was a factor in how we determined that number.
How did you get the 15 cents if it was $1.50?
That was in discussion with HCH.
I mean, I think is that a typo?
15 cents? That's not a typo. That was in discussion with HCH, and part of that feeds into our previous discussion about the city agreeing to that fuel flowage fee as a temporary fee. We don't have that established within our ordinance as something that we provide for with other aircraft stakeholders or airport stakeholders. This would be unique to this particular agreement. Since it's not established, we did work with HCH about what would be amenable in the interim while we work to install a tank to provide that fuel. So it's a low number. It doesn't recoup the cost that we would normally get if they were buying our fuel from our tanks. They're not. But it's a temporary arrangement to provide that. And why we put those two clauses in there, where we have a provision where we're providing it and one where we're not. And I welcome the board's input on that.
I'd like to see it closer to what the margin is, I think it's only fair, because you're losing a lot of revenue for the airport, and it's not equally distributed between the other users of the airport. Like I said, they're the higher usage entity.
And if there's uncertainty about whether or not our flight school is willing to buy the fuel, I mean, this would mandate them buying the fuel if we serve it, okay? And we want to be competitive. We want the price point to work for everyone's operation. If this is something that moves from a temporary to a longer term arrangement,
So you're saying this agreement would be temporary for,
the agreement would not be temporary. We're putting in two conditions that allow for either scenario.
But it's specific to unleaded fuel, which,
It is, and the language could be specific to any fuel.
okay.
Any fuel. And again, we don't want to tailor it necessarily to a specific model. We know that model has changed at this point. It could be, rather than selling unleaded, just selling fuel. There could be a number of factors that change here that are more agreeable to the board and provide, I'd say, a better scenario in terms of what the board thinks is amenable here. We've introduced both of these because we're in new territory. I think if we establish a fuel flowage fee under this agreement, we'll want to establish that specific to this agreement, not at large. We don't want to become,
Right.
we don't want to get in the market of fuel flowage. We want to sell the fuel. And
Well,
we've
I mean,
shown
I
the numbers
think
that speak to that.
Yeah, and the control over the tanks and how the maintenance is performed and the security and all of the things, I think the city does need to be in charge of the fuel that's being distributed at the airport. I think it's part of safety, you know, flight schools train pilots. I don't know that they're trained to take care of fuel properly. And I don't think the airport manager should have to be that policeman. You know, I have to police their fuel. That doesn't make sense. He's doing his own fueling and his own regulations and his own safety, and or her, whoever we get, sorry. So I think it sends I worry about the message it sends if an entity can have their own fuel, because what about the top 3 jet owners that buy Jet A? Tomorrow, are they gonna wanna co-up and buy their own tank and skip the city and not do the $1.50 and do the 15 cents? Then the city will never, ever get to be self-sustaining. That's like a slippery slope.
It's basically encouraging
Yes.
other tenants to bypass essentially the city's service. Airports, it's essentially an encouragement.
It's good feedback, and we find ourselves in a unique position where we have a very large consumer, right, of our airport. Not only of takeoffs and landings, but previously of fuel. They will continue to have a large presence if they continue to operate at our airport. However, because of that large presence, we can't create a perfectly level playing field for all stakeholders, knowing that that use is there, and it can heavily impact our operations one direction or the other. We can create a lot of standards and require those standards to be followed equal across all operations of the airport. Where we differentiate is how we make this work for both parties. How do we make this work knowing that we have no intention of bringing in 2 flight schools to operate out of the airport, having 2 groups as large as the group that we have operate. So we intend, at least today, and I believe the board may concur with this, we will not have a second entity of this size and magnitude operating a flight school at our airport. Knowing that, how do we fashion an agreement that works, that allows the airport to succeed and the vendor here to succeed under this category?
This brings me back to what I said earlier about, is there some sort of agreement that can be made between the school and the city that says we're gonna both bear those original costs, maybe give them a prorated cost per gallon to make up their investment, because essentially it is an investment from the school because they are the ones using it the most. So is there a way that we can get creative with bearing that initial cost to build it? Because that's what it comes down to, is the big ticket item, $450,000 to build it. Is there a way that we can?
I'll add one comment, and I want to give an opportunity for a representative from the vendor to come up and maybe give their comments as well. This is strictly with HCH. This is not with SFA. Clearly, the flight school provides services to SFA, but we do not have a similar or direct agreement with SFA in this regard.
Okay.
So our agreement is with HCH. HCH has an agreement with SFA. There's no triangle, no third agreement here, strictly for this particular flight school in terms of the city and SFA being parties. So I want to give the vendor a chance to come up and provide comment if, is Shannon still here?
So essentially it's a private entity,
So,
essentially.
Yes.
Is that
don't
correct,
have
Michael? It's essentially a private entity?
that's correct.
Okay. Well, I did make some calls to some other airports. I didn't tell them what this entity does. I didn't say any words or names. I just said a tenant would like to have their own tank farm. And I got 3 different responses from 3 different types of people. One being a private consultant in aviation for a long time, the other being a fuel providing company, which is recognizable, and the third one was an airport in DFW, a small airport that's in a similar situation as us. I called each one of them to get their opinion, and they all said absolutely not. That would never happen. That's no. Just gonna throw that out there, that I did make the time to call these 3 different angles to kind of hear different opinions from different worlds, and all 3 of them did say
Did
absolutely
they
not.
give you a reason?
First one was as a slippery slope. It brings other tenants the idea they can have their own. I shouldn't say tenants, but people in the airport.
Sure.
That was the first one. The second one involved EPA. She brought up the spill that happened in Tennessee last
Yep.
year, that a airport had the same situation. The valve was left 3/4 open, it spilled out, and they're still dealing with it. And this happened in October of last year. So that being said, they didn't know how to properly maneuver the fuel, so that's why it spilled out. That was the second reason, and then the third reason, they didn't give me a reason. They were just no, absolutely not, and that was from the airport in DFW. So, just something to think about. But
I mean, I would echo that, because even if you do allow someone to have their own fuel tank, ultimately it's the city that's going to be responsible with TCEQ or the EPA if there's an issue. And on top of that, fuel sales is the bread and butter of how the airport makes money. So
That was the
I
third
think the
reason.
city needs to control that.
And for safety. I mean, we have trained people for a reason. That's what an FBO does, is it sells fuel. I mean, they do other things, Colin, I know you do, but that is the bulk of what they do.
Well, let me
They
speak.
sell fuel and make money,
Let me-
hopefully.
Let me give you guys, you know this, but for everyone else's benefit, Colin is not just the airport manager, he's the sheriff out there, okay? And safety, if anyone's prioritizing safety, it's him. And he's calling our engineers to check our infrastructure. He's calling utility construction to make repairs. He's calling in all the experts at the city that do these things and also have to prioritize safety, not only our own regulations, but state and federal. We got to follow those in all other aspects of what we do. So in terms of safety, we're talking about safety for everyone at the airport, and especially the students, but everyone at the airport and everything we do. How that fuel is handled is a very sensitive issue. In fact, we address issues and mitigate as much as we can. Any fuel deliveries that go to our wastewater plant, our water plant, even little spills can cost us in the tens and twenties of thousands of dollars to mitigate, that you would think is negligible if that were in your backyard, but has an impact in the areas, and the things that we do and the services we provide are especially important. Does it seem to the outside world that we're being overly aggressive in how we enforce those things? Absolutely, because there's so many elements to that involve safety and leaching of that fuel in our soil that it eventually gets to our groundwater. Those are big concerns and have huge impacts. We don't want to risk that. We don't want to risk that. What we have today is absolutely a temporary agreement. It's an arrangement. We want the board's feedback on this and can be subject to change based on that feedback. And what you guys concur on and what your recommendation is will help inform council's decision and any changes that come with that.
It needs to be fair and equitable. Can't price them out. I think these fees are too low. And I don't think it protects, there's no language in here that discusses something other than unleaded fuel.
Okay.
That's my comments.
Jason?
I did have one question. I mean, you included this, the final temporary self-fueling allowance and extension. So they're buying fuel from the city again?
No.
Okay.
No, they are bypassing the city.
No, I understand that. So how, so we said that this agreement ended on April the 6th. That was over a month ago. They're still using their own fuel. So it sounds to me like we don't have any kind of enforcement mechanism. I mean, at the very least, if we're gonna continue to kick this can down the road, we gotta start enforcing the rules that we're asking them to be
So
held to.
I can speak to that. We've, through that temporary agreement, the goal was to continue operating in good faith to develop a proposed FBO agreement, which is what you're seeing today. Yes, we're past that deadline. We're trying to work in good faith. We're trying to be good partners. We're trying to get to a goal that is amenable for all of us. The alternative, if nothing within this FBO agreement works, that current agreement expires in October. Or there could be a recommendation that we just revert to the original agreement. Cease activities, there's a grace period to remove equipment, and you're buying leaded fuel again. Those are options. Maybe not be the options that the board would recommend or that would consider, but they're options that exist. There are options to go back and rework this agreement, adjust the fees that are proposed, particularly under that category number, or that item number 3, under those two options. Whether fuel flowage becomes a longer term, the board has said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that 15 cents just won't cover it. If it's any longer than a month or two,
I thought it was a typo.
No.
if it's any longer than a month or two, we know realistically we're not going to get that infrastructure in place in the next 4 to 5 months. It could be 6 to 8 if we start right away. Even then, that fee may be too low, as the board has said. If the $50 per aircraft is too low, it's an either or. And typically, in the last few years that HCH has been buying our fuel, they bought more than enough fuel, and that fee had never been an issue.
Yeah.
Could it be? Probably not, considering the operations that they would be
Right.
continuing. So those are factors, and if those fees, by the board's recommendation, should be adjusted, we can go back and adjust those and present
And are they
something.
paying those in the interim, or will that be recaptured later, or what's, like, are they paying anything now?
Who is enforcing this? Who is checking the receipts for the fuel that they're getting? I mean, is that even happening now? Do
We
we have
have-
any mechanism in place where that can happen?
Yes, back pay to cover the existing FBO would be a component of what we agree on once a new agreement's in place.
Okay.
But it doesn't exist today, right now, the ability to recapture that.
We haven't defined exactly the fuel flowage operations, and that there are things they're doing right now. We haven't quantified that with a specific fee to then require them to pay. Our agreement under the temporary arrangement that you see as one of our attachments is that we get back pay for that they pay us based on the fuel flowage that they've already accounted for.
So
thus
right
far.
now, they're buying their own fuel.
They're buying their own fuel.
And not paying anything yet.
Correct.
Yeah, essentially the temporary allowance states that the flowage fee that is agreed upon in the final agreement will be retroactive to all the fuel they bought during all temporary allowance periods.
So this category A category, with or without, or I guess, selling, is not selling.
If we do nothing else before we leave tonight, it's my opinion that we need to, before we leave, put this into place and start enforcing the rules. If we need to postpone deciding on whether or not we put in a tank, that sort of thing, at the very least, we need to have something where we're recouping some of the money.
It's saying it's retroactive.
Yeah, it's retroactive.
Right, but it's not,
Yeah.
it's not in place yet, so we need to put that in place.
It would.
You as a board can't.
Or recommend that we. put
Yeah,
it in
you
place.
can only advise. I mean, it really has to. It's up to.
Recommendation's fair, and that can be part of the recommendation if there are other elements that you'd like to recommend. The agreement would be, there'd be retroactive payments that they would be obligated to. So if and when an agreement is in place, a long-term agreement or an amended agreement, those retroactive payments would be required.
So is there any talk about them contributing to a new tank?
That's what my point was.
Yeah,
earlier.
like,
I mean,
uh,
go
Kelly.
ahead. No, go ahead, Ms. Cathy.
No, that was your comment.
That was my idea. Just the idea of they need a tank. We don't have the extra capital possibly to do that. Why don't we meet in the middle, and then maybe we could get a bigger tank or
One
even
option
this.
for that is an infrastructure fee, like was mentioned, that would, for that fuel, everybody pays it, but they're gonna pay the majority of it, cause they're buying the fuel.
Yeah, that's the only talk so far. I mean, from last summer's and 3 scenarios, there was an infrastructure recapture fee in the price that we quoted, that if and when we get this in, this would be the price of the fuel, and it included the normal margin plus an infrastructure recapture fee. It may have been a 10-year recapture under that calculation. Subsequently, I think we've stretched that out a little further in later calculations. But yeah, I mean, from the get-go, that's been the thought, is if there's no willingness to, and there's been no offers to answer the question, whoever asked to contribute to that.
And
Not to me.
yes, and I don't know if I would be hesitant to go down that road. I don't want to condition the installation of this tank upon some, pre-negotiated price based on a market that we can't foresee
Right.
Either
right now. So We want to be able to, the control also involves our ability to price the fuel once we've served it and make it available to the public.
You gotta-
Yeah, that
you
might
gotta
get-
market price plus your margin plus a
Yeah.
fee.
Right.
And if we're one of the very few that offer this and people really want it, then they're probably gonna pay it. I mean, if they're seeking it out, they're gonna pay what it is.
It's another variable. If we're one of the few that offer it, there's less choice to go somewhere else. We're more of a destination for that particular fuel.
So if
I
the
don't know
fuel
how
tank,
much that adds to our revenue or how much market there is for that. We've debated that a little bit. We don't know that.
so if we remove the unleaded and just say fuel, Taylor, that was your comment,
Then
like
we-
buy fuel from the airport, no matter what, and then we recapture that. I mean,
by the letter of this language, they would be paying the whatever fixed amount per aircraft per month. Because they would not be buying our fuel
Yeah.
at that time.
You got,
Now, if we were to structure this in a way where the fuel flowage was not an alternative, where we are today, we would need to provide a grace for that transition, clearly. We haven't discussed that at length, but that's certainly information, and if that's part of the recommendation, that can feed our discussions going forward.
With your advice, I mean, we can definitely look, and I think what Taylor's saying is that there's just no provisions in the agreement that deal with 100 low lead. If they were to choose or have to revert their fleet back to it, we're for 5 years we're exposed. So your advice could simply be to, and Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you can, would be to make sure that's in there just in case.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying that they will change back, but
but if they did, then
I
we're
don't have a
holding.
crystal
a
ball.
tank.
Here we go
Yeah.
again, yeah.
We're holding a tank we paid for with fuel
Yeah.
we can't sell, and it expires in 6 months. So
Yeah.
now we're gonna have to pay to get rid of fuel that we can't sell. I'm just saying that might be far out, but that's, if this is about a maintenance cost, and then the fuel is more expensive than the maintenance cost, and they go back to 100 low lead, we might be ahead in the future, but we still have gas we can't sell. I don't know.
bottom line is they are the largest customer. They're a good customer. So just like we've talked about before, they got a discount on the fuel price. They got the self-serve price instead of the full service,
Yep.
but that was a benefit to the other airport users, so that
Yeah, I
the
think
pumps
that
aren't
was
tied
okay.
up. It serves everybody. I'm great with that.
Yeah.
Totally okay with having a good partnership that works both ways, but I don't want to be a charity at the same time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So at face value, these numbers seem low to me, considering we're losing the 70,000 a year that we used to get off the fuel sales.
And if it's 38,000 gallons of this, it's not even 6,000. I mean, I thought you said it was 75,000 that we made on the $1.50,
Right.
and then this 15 cents, the difference would have been 5,700. Am I
About,
right?
it'd be 10%, 15 cents is 10% of that margin, yeah, so 10%.
I just don't know why it's so, why is it so unbalanced, I guess?
Again, that goes back to our discussions with HCH, their projections about operating at the airport, and what we see as a temporary option for them as we work to build that infrastructure and begin the process of serving that unleaded fuel. Now, it's clear that there's an item 5, if you look further down in that agreement, we attempt to require that be a captive operator, meaning that they would be required to buy our fuel if we offer it.
Yeah.
Particularly fuel that's not ordinarily offered. We did highlight that as a statement. Now, we also don't want there to be any gray areas within our language. And if we're hung up on item 3 stating unleaded, we can be clearer on that, so there's no discrepancy. We don't want to get into arguments later once this is approved and have some disagreements over how this needs to work. We want to get that ironed out right now. So if the board is possibly confused about how that's worded, we can look at that and see if we can make that clearer.
So this agreement relies on us putting the infrastructure in the tank in? I mean, that's how it's,
That idea is what is driving the numbers that you see in that particular category. And that can change. I mean, we can, if, again, I know there was some hesitation and maybe not a lot of confidence, although some interest in this, this idea of providing unleaded fuel to the general public at the airport. If we do that, we expect the flight school to be a primary consumer of that fuel. That's the expectation, and that's what's driving the prices that you see under fuel flowage. Yes, it does seem low. It's with the intent that it, in our mind, that it's temporary. If we think that that's not strong enough language within this FBO for a 5-year term, we can reevaluate that.
I wanted to remind you too that, you know, the precedent this, you know, that these decisions make, and you tend to get stuck with some of these. And that's actually, again, a federal grant assurance is that we're fair and equitable. And so, you know, just going back to the precedent it sets to have a tank on field, the fees are, you know, can tend to be a precedent, if not qualified based on certain parameters of the situation. In other words, these fees may be for large, you know, customers who consume over 1,000 gallons. And it's actually in the agreement, I think, that is something like for a customer, you know, for this fee is based on for a user consuming 1,000 gallons or more a month. So we tried to interject a little bit of extra language in there to kind of pigeonhole this towards a certain user so that we don't get stuck with it for mom and pop, you know what I'm saying? But again, I want to explain why that said that way.
And we've talked about the potential for serving unleaded being a possibility. I don't think anyone's saying we want fuel flowage fees to somehow compete with our fuel sales.
Okay.
That is clearly going to take away from fuel sales.
Because I'm thinking the jet people might want the 15 cents too.
I'm sure a lot of folks would. Again, this is an effort. We're in new territory for the city as an airport. We're trying to be cooperative, but we're bringing this to you, as we always do, as the other item. We want to make sure we're doing what's right for the airport. We want to make sure we're recovering costs. We don't want to be subsidizing this into the long-term future. We want it to pay for itself. That's the goal.
And I think selling fuel is a big equalizer. I mean, the more you fly, the more fuel you need, the more the city can bring in revenue. I mean, it's very equal. The more you fly, the more you're using the facilities. So I do like the idea that it's a fuel-based, because it seems fair. I don't know.
Some people are flying elsewhere
Yeah.
versus.
Well, yes. Now, okay, this is true. So you would have to have it because there are a lot of cross countries, and the flight school is not.
Are we going to open up for public comment about this one? Or?
Does anybody want public comment on this?
If there's a representative for HCH that's still here, we'd like to hear from you.
John, but,
I don't. He can't do that.
well, I know, but.
No, thank
John
you.
can
Have
comment.
ACH and not a-
Yeah, no, Jason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Daddy. Come on.
I'm kind of hard of hearing.
State your,
I've heard of everything.
state your name.
Address.
David Roberts, and I belong to the county and not to the city. But I have listened to this, and I'm hard of hearing, and I don't know the contracts and everything. But I have a question as far as the liability is concerned. Is the city liable for outside fuel farms? We have an outside fuel farm that he doesn't control. Are we liable if they have something? If they have a spill, as he said, are we liable for the environmental impact? That's some of the questions I've heard or I've come up with from listening to that, and I can't hear everything, so I apologize.
No, it's a good point.
But liability is one thing. Are we covered Even though they may have insurance, we're still gonna be sued if we have a problem. Are we covered?
We bear some liability regardless. It's our airport, it's our property.
Well, he can't control it. He's not controlling the outside fuel farm that you've allowed on the premises. He can't control it, and it's his responsibility to answer to the city.
Oh, it's the city's responsibility. He is
So-
the city. I'm not putting that on Colin's
That
shoulders.
was one of the things that I am observing and not knowing the whole contract. They may be covered and I don't know it, because I haven't read anything.
They maintain their own liability insurance, as all FBOs
Well,
do.
they have, but you can still be sued
Sure.
as a city.
We can always
Thank
be
you.
sued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
We-
the city was sued.
We can always be sued. But I appreciate those comments. It's certainly a factor in this too. It's why we don't want to necessarily have a free-for-all on fuel flowage and having fuel moving around by different vendors. We don't want to get in that. This was established to move forward in where we are today in our relationship with HCH and the operations that they're currently conducting. How do we move forward? How do we get to the point where we want to be, which is serving that fuel? We think this gets us there, but certainly accept the input and the recommendations about maybe the price points that we've chosen for fees in these particular areas, and then the other elements and comments that have been expressed. Very helpful.
Do you need anything from us?
I would like a consolidated list of advice,
Yeah.
if we can work through it.
If you
I'd
can
like
list
to s-
out,
I'd like to see the category A fee the same as the existing agreement, which is $100 a month. And then I have a problem with the 15 cents flow fee on the other option.
Just on that point real quick, when the original agreement was made, did they have fewer aircraft? Is that, I think I heard that's why the fee was reduced from 100 to 50, because they have more aircraft now? Is that correct?
that was a factor in us reducing.
Well, the
that.
original agreement was $100 flat fee a month,
Yeah.
not per nothing, just for instruction, and $50 a month under the rental category. We've consolidated rental and instruction as
Category
instruction.
A, okay.
Because they never did end up really renting planes to just anybody, so.
Right, it's category A.
So, yeah, so,
And that's a good point, Colin. I think that was, we maybe didn't specify that. It may be needed.
Missed
That
that
this is category A, and there's clearly rental occurring
Yeah,
with
there's
HCH and the
others.
students, but it's under that flight instruction activity.
Yeah, I mean, they're providing the instruction. That's the intent of the business. There's not like Drew's, which is just rental, so. And as long as the fuel sales would outweigh or be more,
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything further. I mean,
Okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, just touching on what I said earlier, it'd be great if, since it's a private entity, it'd be great if there was some sort of JV, I don't know what the term is for it, but we're the city and the private entity are on the same page, that we want this farm, let's both bear these costs, continue I understand they're getting a discounted rate or some sort of different rate than the normal person anyway, like continue that. But I'd love to see if they would be open to some sort of JV agreement where it's mutual for both the city and the customer. That's just my ideas from my own experience.
you're just saying you don't want the city to assume all the risk.
That's basically what I'm saying, yes.
the upfront cost,
The upfront cost just seems like a lot, and it's a risk reward. I understand that perfectly, but at the current moment in time, the only customer is that customer. That's why I'm suggesting to kind of half and half the risk, or even 75-25%. I'm not saying it has to be 50-50. Just if you're a partner, be a
Some
partner.
contribution
Be
to
a
the
yeah.
idea.
Just let's be a partner together. Let's grow this together. If it ends up being a situation where, all these planes, they all want that type of fuel, great. Partner should be happy for the other partner because now the city's got a lot of customers, and then they still can use it, of course. And
then
then
could they come back and say, well, we want part of the fuel sales because we paid for the infrastructure?
no, there would be there should be some sort of
Well,
This would be gifted.
kind of similar to us wanting to remove the other categories from this proposed FBO. If we were to work with HCH on something like that, it would be a separate agreement would not necessarily dictate what language is in this FBO. If for some reason that fell out and there wasn't a provision and we weren't heading the direction of providing that fuel in the near future, again, this looks very different. This looks very different. So, but we do hear those comments. And I've written that down as something for recommendation.
Oh, he wants to.
John's gotta leave, he wants you to hand these to him. Well, somebody. Yeah. Sorry.
Colin, what else do you need?
Just hoping to get a list of advice. So the comments I picked
No,
up, the
No,
comments.
go
I
ahead,
picked-
go ahead, Colin, reiterate those.
The comments I picked up is the city should be the sole provider of fuel. Is that for form, do y'all want to make that formal advice, or was that just one opinion? I'm just,
I would, yes.
I think so, yes.
Yes.
Long term.
Yes.
I think that's.
We know we're not there right now.
so that's,
Well, yes, yes, I would say that I am in agreement that the city is the one that provides the fuel, all the fuel at the airport. That's my, everybody's in agreement with that.
and then another comment was that the agreement needs to address 100 low lead in case of a conversion or a reversion, or in any other reason. It's just, it's not in there.
Yes, buy our fuel, which I guess would have to happen if you cannot, yes.
I'm sorry, we did anticipate, if that were the comments that came out of the earlier item, which is why we moved that up, then that certainly will change some language, and we need to go back and look at amending this, so,
Okay,
thank you.
but I do think that that's the general consensus. I think everyone is in agreement that the FBO should sell all the fuel at the airport.
I mean, I just don't wanna be in this situation again
Yeah.
where
Yes,
we're not
yes,
providing
we
the
were,
fuel and it creates a liability
yep. Well, and
and a loss of revenue.
somebody else is gonna want the still.
Okay,
Yes.
and then there was discussion on, that if we didn't sell the unleaded fuel, that we would be stuck with this 15 cents flowage fee. So is there official advice on what the flowage you would advise the flowage fee to be?
Somewhere closer to what the margin would be.
Closer to our net revenue margin on
Move the
fuel.
decimal.
What was the original amount? What was the original amount? You might have said it. The original amount. It went from something to 15 cents. Do you know what the first?
$1.50.
That's our margin.
Yeah, the flowage fee didn't.
Yeah.
The margin was, again, just last fiscal year, if you capture that window, the average margin, I say it's last fiscal year up to when they stopped and buying the fuel in November. It actually included October, November was $1.50-ish, yeah.
Okay. What is that? Like a 60% deduction, or 40% deduction, or 90% deduction?
90%, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
15 cents is about 10% of 150.
Is there
Every
okay.
time.
Okay. So is there another percentage that we could propose, not being a 90% deduction? Like, let's. I don't know.
What do you, like,
You said
You said closer
what's closer? What is closer?
30%? You're saying?
I'm saying a lot closer.
Yeah, a lot closer. So
Like
80
maybe what
80 to
they're already
100%.
I don't, why the discount?
Yeah.
Was there something that we don't know why
So
there was such a big discount?
look, I'm trying to simplify. It's part of negotiation. I mean, there was a concession initially to work to provide for their new business model, being their fleet now consuming unleaded fuel, and their desire for their fleet to consume unleaded fuel, not the low lead. We knew we couldn't do that right away. We know there's a time frame for installing the infrastructure and serving it the way we serve low lead, the way we serve Jet A. In that process, it's been a little hairy because, okay, we do a fuel flowage fee, or we modify the fees. How do we get closer to the easy calculation, which is that net above wholesale fuel purchase?
Do we know what they're paying for the unleaded fuel now?
What they're paying per gallon? No, I don't have exactly what they're paying and what
Do we
deal
know
they've made.
what it is?
No, that's what he said, he didn't know, but.
No, I don't.
But I don't know
Like we
why that,
discussed earlier, we don't have any of that data yet. We haven't requested that. That'll be part of the reimbursement. Well, the price won't be. Actually, it'll just be the gallons. So not
And I can't say we're in a position to provide a guaranteed price point.
No,
at any
No,
point.
no, I think he's saying, like, what are they paying for what they get now, which really, I don't think,
Versus
It
what-
was stated earlier that, and I'm sorry Shannon's not here, but it was stated earlier that they're paying closer to the avgas price for the unleaded. Now, we can always get
That's what I don't
verification
know.
from him and communicate that to the board at a later time.
but I don't know that that should influence our decision on
I'm with you.
what
Is that-
we're recouping.
I would say in terms of this agreement, we don't want to go down that road of trying to.
Yeah, I don't wanna
to
know,
fix
I
a
just want
price.
the $1.50 we used to get.
I don't
But,
wanna fix the price,
but
I
the
don't wanna give a
recommendation
big
of being
discount.
comparable
Yeah,
to similar revenue, that's a clear recommendation to us.
right.
To
That's
trying to achieve some similar revenue.
Yeah.
Agreed, that would be my advice.
Okay.
Is that good, Colin? Do you want more? There's a lot of advice.
What's the fee?
I would say $1.50 if that's the average. I
I
said
mean,
move the
where-
decimal.
we don't know where that puts them on, get them, well,
Well, what difference does it make?
We
didn't
hear you, there's
switch.
some negotiation that's gonna
Yes.
be involved.
Yeah.
Again, because it's new territory, it's not as easy for us to say.
Yeah, could you
Push
leave us
forward
a
and say,
little
"This
bit of
is what
wiggle
it
room,
is."
I guess, just a
yeah,
little?
absolutely.
I mean,
I mean,
I think it should be a set.
if
percentage.
it makes you feel better, I mean, our margin right this minute is not $1.50 because of the
Well, I know,
volatility
it
and stuff,
moves
but
around,
it
I
moves
get it.
around, yeah.
but
so-
on average,
But that was the average for that.
okay, so $1.30 to $1.50.
But does that put them paying,
That's,
$8
But they-
per
yeah.
gallon? That's what. I don't want.
Combined with the price of what they're providing themselves plus the flowage fee?
Yeah, I think it is, but.
But
Yes.
I'm not sure why the board, I don't know why that would matter.
I just said $1. I mean, just set that as our goal.
Yeah.
it's gotta be a
Yeah,
percentage.
there's our
I
recommendation
don't
that you
want
try
to
to get
explore,
$1.50.
and we don't typically, we don't try to explore what the vendors' costs are.
No, I just don't want them,
that-
I don't wanna price them out of the market.
That's it.
Correct. And that's where the negotiation comes in, and we have gone back and forth many times to get to the point where we are now with this agreement. That's without hearing anything from the advisory board. So now
Yeah.
we've got feedback from the advisory board that will feed additional discussions. I think overall, the recommendation is go back and amend this, go back and
Yes.
rework this. We're concerned about the price points. We're concerned about the potential for liability. We think we've covered that in our Exhibit A for the most part, as much as we can, but overall, having fuel served and trucked and moved on our airport by someone outside the city, in general, is a liability. So we've heard that concern as well.
Well, even if the retroactive was a reduced rate, but then going forward, it recaptures some of that margin. That's, just good business sense. Let's try to renegotiate that a little bit.
Anything else, Colin?
So the flowage fee when the city is not selling the fuel that they use, the advice is to make it as equal as possible to the current margin or the quoted the margin
Correct.
Yes.
or the average margin. Yeah.
Something along those
Okay.
lines.
All right. And then there was mentioned of an infrastructure fee. And I'm not sure that really plays into this agreement.
No, not this
no.
agreement, that's more.
Okay,
on
it would be
tax.
more on the,
We can come back to
Yeah,
that in
yeah,
future items. Things that have been brought up, I know, in some of these previous items for discussion. We'll bring back those topics and see if
Okay.
you need more information in the future.
was there any there was a little comment about the first category A when the city is selling fuel. Is there any advice on the,
Well, the existing agreement, like I said, category A was $100, but y'all have kind of combined those, so, I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's not a huge issue with me,
It's to encourage the fuel sales, and we do that with others.
yeah.
But the $100 is different from the 50. So we've heard you.
that was my list, Mike. Did you catch any other comments? And
No, that I think that pretty much covers it. If you want, those have already been stated and reiterated. If you can make a motion in a second and vote.
On the Colin, could you read it again so that we know what we're,
He read it. I make a motion that
okay.
it's reviewed as you wrote down, as the comments that you've heard and you understand them,
No second.
that the city maybe revisit that.
you want one of the advices to be that you guys get to see it again? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'd like to,
In addition to what I read off?
unless it's so time sensitive that y'all are okay with what they come up with,
We
but
can have a meeting next week, I don't care.
we can be available. What is y'all's
That's up to the
opinion?
board.
What is
If you guys
y'all's
wanna see it
opinion on
again, you can. We
I
can
mean,
recommend that.
We're
Kelly, you
here
wanna
to give
revisit it,
advice
or-
to y'all, so if, I mean, that's what you asked us to do, so if you want us to do it again, we'll do it again.
I
He's
think we
asking if
should
we
be
want to.
Oh, if we want to, oh, I don't care, whatever. What do y'all want? Yes, y'all are saying yes, I'm sorry, I missed the point, yes?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I think yes.
We would.
And this may be one where we come back to the board and provide you an update on our progress
Yeah,
Perfect.
specifically.
Yeah.
Right.
So Taylor makes the motion,
and I think Jason,
Jason?
okay,
Thank
all in
you.
favor? Aye. All opposed? Is that helpful? Do we do it?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Bring John back in.
Oh, do we,
He
I
left.
think he left.
So I think we're moving on to the lease, are we not?
Yeah.
So he stays out for the lease as well.
Oh, okay.
He's gone and he left.
He left?
Okay, who is this one? What page am I on? Is this
F.
Mike or Colin or?
I mean, I can do it.
I
It's,
believe it's this one.
should be a fairly easy one, I hope.
Was that 2F, Colin?
Okay, hang on.
The Pruitt lease,
Yes.
you ready?
Yes,
Okay. So, yeah, item F is advised on an amended ground lease agreement with KP Pruitt Investments LLC for hangar A100 and associated areas. So, as you may recall, KP Pruitt Investments built the hangar that HCH subleases for their main operation hub. That would be hangar A100. With that lease came some other areas, the septic field, one of the parking lots. There may have been another area that they're in the exhibit you had there. The primary reason this one's coming back up because the initial lease prohibited the storage of fuel on all leased premises. So we have modified that language to allow it under certain circumstances, and we've also added a area where they have located this temporary fuel tank to allow
Ramp area part? Yeah, okay.
to collect lease proceeds on that footprint as well.
It's Exhibit C in your packet.
Yeah, got there finally, okay.
And so, but again, the main change is fuel related. We made some other ancillary tweaks and updates, but essentially it comes down to modifying the language about fuel storage and adding the footprint of the tank area.
So if we were to put in a tank and they're buying from us, would that just go back, or would you redo the lease? What would that look like?
Yeah, I think it says that if you know, they're not, when their permission expires to vend the fuel, that they must remove the tank at their cost and immediately, and we would drop that from their annual lease payment. And we could even prorate it if we want to get into it, you know, based on if they've already paid for the year, we could prorate a rebate. But yeah, as soon as the provisions are triggered that they must buy our fuel through the other agreement, then they would be required to remove that. And that's, you know, that's something, you know, I think they anticipate and expect. So again, the lease was just kind of ancillary to this big picture here.
Anybody have any?
Any questions?
I think it's pretty,
I don't have any questions,
no,
so
we have no questions. What do you want from us?
needs a motion or?
We want, okay.
Again, we think the lease provides, and there hasn't been as much discussion on the lease side of things as there was on the FBO. It provides for both conditions. It provides well for their current state. It provides for a future state if there were no tank at that location.
I'll make the motion that we accept the proposed lease as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? agenda. Okay. It's pretty bad. All right,
Business plan.
business plan. Advise on scoping of an airport business plan. Is that Colin or is that Mike?
It'll be both of us. I'll
Okay.
start it out if that's
Ready,
okay.
set, go.
So it's become apparent that, these discussions and just general operation of the airport has really floated, the idea that, that the airport needs a professionally prepared business plan to help with many factors of the airport. A very broad business plan to include things like updating the governance and administration documents. So these are our ordinances and our lease documents and the rules and regulations. Those have been tweaked over the years, but you look at them, you read them, they've been there a long time. And, I'm not necessarily qualified by myself to do this. Jerry's juggling a lot of things and he's not an airport expert. So, I think the consensus is that, and you guys are too busy to, do it for us. So, we wouldn't want to ask you. So, I think having an expert consultant that does this every day and day out, who can pull data from other airports to help us massage those governance documents would be good. They would do things like the plan would offer market analysis and guidance for airport fees and services. So, are we leaving money on the table with fees? I get comments about it. Why aren't we charging fees for this and doing that? So this would give us feedback on what other airports are doing, and go as far as giving us a plan to a cafeteria, a plan, a menu of fees that we could consider and an implementation plan to put those in place, and so we can make an educated decision on what's right for us. Provide recommendations for airport development and infrastructure. So, we just went through the ALP. That provided a lot of this, but I don't know about some of y'all, but I kind of wish we had checked the box for the business plan to go along with the ALP, because I was discussing with Wolpert today that it's that last piece of the puzzle. That implementation just went so far in that plan that a business plan to go with it. And it's actually, when they offered us the ALP project, they offered us everything but the business plan, but it was as far as paying for it, the TxDOT grant. But they did offer us to check that last box, and if we paid for it, and we didn't. So at the time we didn't have it budgeted, but in retrospect, I think we wish we had, because to me, it feels like we got, if we're running a marathon, we got within a mile of the finish line, and we didn't get that last bit of advice to how are we going to make that $300 million worth of infrastructure? How are we going to pay for it? What parts of it are going to create the most revenue for us? And just that last advice, that I think it's missing. So I think we've recognized that, and we're ready to put that in place. Of course, we want them to help us identify additional revenue sources for in business development opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity out there to diversify and pull things in, and I think having a fresh set of eyes on it. We kind of get lost in our day-to-day and our focus and what we're doing, and I think someone from the outside could provide us some perspective on that. And so I think it'd be good to get advice on that. To diversify. I agree with Kathy. I think fuel is the customary number one revenue generator for airports, and it probably will be. But I do think that 90% of revenue from fuel, it would be healthy if it could come down. So we weren't so reliant on that. Whether it's city building and owning hangars and renting them, to do another business development that's related to the airport.
Fuel cells are our stocks.
Yeah.
These other fees are our bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to keep us afloat when there's volatility, when there's negotiations, when things are up and down. We hope that everything's stable and everything's just on a straight up slope. But we're going to come across hurdles. We'll continue to come across hurdles, and if this can help stabilize some of that revenue stream, still provide for what our goal is, the airport should be self-sufficient. And the council, I know, is sensitive to any subsidy, any transfer of property tax dollars that can go to other core city services should go to those services. We want to minimize that. So this is an attempt to try and understand that, where we are in today's market, where we anticipate tomorrow's market being. Again, unleaded service may be part of that solution. If task 3 is one I'm keeping an eye on, the comparable airports we've had. Even in my time working with Colin, we've had talks about who our peer airports are. Who's our peers? Who do we compare ourselves to on a regular basis? How do we weigh our regulations against our quote-unquote peers, and who are they? That can be debated. This may provide a better indication of who those are that gives us a trajectory for comparing what we do. If we make changes to our rules, what are our peers doing? If we make changes to prices, if we look at a different strategy for how we price our fuel, are our peers doing something similar? Is that something that we should follow, or should we be a pioneer in that area? It's good to look at how others are doing it, because certainly others are doing some things right that we are not, and maybe others are doing things wrong that we don't want to copy. So that will help quite a bit.
Yeah, and it would go on to, you were given a draft of our first concept of scope, and we had a little bit of help from a consultant with that scope. And it's everything from staffing to planning to implementation and rollout, so it's a comprehensive plan. Mike, do you want to address how it potentially would be funded?
We are looking at funding that through our Economic Development Fund. We know there's more eyeballs on this airport than there's ever been. We know that there's an interest in it being an economic driver. We're going to leverage that in our discussions with our Type B Development Corporation. This is not something that we can go get TxDOT money for off the bat, at least not yet. That may be a door that opens later. But we want this now. We want this yesterday.
Would this help us with that? No?
This could help us,
okay.
as the business plan, it could help us strategically identify our approach to outside funding.
Okay.
In fact, our downtown implementation strategy did just that. It identified funding sources, and some of those we're going after right now. So it could help us realize some sources we may not be thinking of. We sort of go back to the TxDOT well on a regular basis. There may be others that we haven't thought of that may be available to us.
So what advice do you want from the board?
Well, if you've had a chance to review the full scoping document,
Did you see this packet?
Yeah, and it was at the end, so I guess the answer is no.
I got to the end and I was like, oh my God.
No, I mean, did we leave anything out? Do you not like something that's on it? I mean, the scope you see is what we're kind of running with. If you see some items on there that just as a board member, you say, hey, that's a no-go here. We've tried that before. Or if you see items that are missing, hey, y'all didn't think about this. We need advice on this. Anything related to the governance and the business of the airport.
If you're wanting to kind of get through this and efficiently,
I needed a table of contents. This was everywhere.
I'm going to help you with that. We've got tasks. We've got tasks. If you look at the headlines there, task 1 through 13.
Yes.
Read the task headings and then go down to page 7. Look at deliverables.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay,
Right,
and that's what the tasks are going to give us.
Yes, that's what we would hope to receive from a finished business plan. Again, not asking you to break this down into a million parts, but if there's something that jumps out at you that, oh, we're not addressing this, or maybe this is a component that needs to be identified.
What's
That's
the
what we're looking
time
for.
frame on this? Like, is this starting now, or are we trying to get money to do it?
If we incorporate the regulatory elements, reworking the airport zoning, the code changes, that could increase the timeline. I mean, if it were just the market analysis and some best practices review and recommendations, it may be 6-7 months, 6 to 8 months. It could be longer than that if we're looking at the regulatory side. Now, that can be broken up into phases and milestones where we get some recommendations initially and they move on to another phase. How that breaks out, we're not sure yet. But if we want to address all those things within this particular project, that would be something we'd look a recommendation for as well.
And I would also point out that if we're going to fund this through the Type B right now, currently, there's no money in their account. That's going to come. The city's got to determine how much of its economic development monies that it has set aside are going to be transferred over. That decision hasn't been made. So once
Okay.
that does happen, at some point in the future, hopefully soon, then it will require a project to be presented to the Type B, which will have certain notice and hearing requirements that will take some time. So I think it's 60 or 90 days. I can't remember off the top of my head. So again, we're looking at months, not weeks, as far as
There's,
showing this.
there's data available too on, and I don't think a lot of people realize the economic impact that an airport has on a city. And that's something that needs to be stressed in all of
Yes.
this.
And we know the investments of what we're proposing in the layout plan are significant. We know potentially the impacts are significant. How do we get there year over year?
Yeah.
Did you want to update them on the Type Bs? Did they review future potential projects at the last meeting?
They did. One of the items they discussed was this item. So there were other items as well, but this was one of the things that we want to present first as far as funding and presenting a project to the Type B Corporation. So again, as soon as the funding gets transferred from the city to Type B through a 380, then we can get started on those projects. But it's going to take some time. I just wanted y'all to be aware. It's going to take we're going to be months down the road, not
Okay.
anytime in the near future.
I mean, it looks good to me, so if you just need a motion to proceed with,
Yeah, what do you want from us?
Let's advise on it.
Advice?
I mean,
What do you want?
if you have advice on any additions or deletions, we'd take that. If not, if you like the way it is, then just the advice to move forward as is.
I
I'll make a motion, we move forward, that is.
I had one thing I was gonna say that I'd love to see whoever this consultant company that we hire, I'd like to see references to. I know it's kind of an odd question to ask, but it'd be
Yeah,
nice.
this would be
Required.
procured through a typical government situation
Okay.
where, or situation's not the right word, but, structure.
Process,
Process, yeah,
yeah.
I believe we would start with a request for qualifications.
Okay, good.
And it would be,
That's the only
it would be
comment I had.
bid, advertised, and we would, to the public, yeah, it wouldn't be a closed door thing. And then even after that, there would be a proposal process.
we'd have a method for evaluating proposals and then negotiating a contract. So there's a few steps involved in that. We want to be
What we want
ready.
to do is provide the scope so we get an apples to apples. We don't have people, submitting qualifications that, can't do the plan.
Sure.
So having that structure up front will help us. If it may get tweaked after we pick somebody.
Sure.
Y'all didn't think about this or that, but
Yeah.
And with your recommendation to move forward, whether it's as is or with other suggestions, our goal is to get a scope prepared, so as soon as we're ready to make decisions, we can move. And yes, that is months down the road and how we finally get deliverables, but that's as quick as we can move, so we're gonna do it.
And it would be my hope that the board was involved with the process, that the
Correct.
consultant consults with you on, every step, not every step of the way, but, at milestones, so.
Similar to our other boards and commissions, the Airport Advisory Board would be an absolute stakeholder providing feedback in various tasks and deliverables within this business plan. So
And once the plan's done, you would be vital in the implementation of what we do and don't do from the plan. Doesn't mean, but just because the plan says this, we gotta do it. It's, we would take y'all's advice on that, and the city council on most of this would decide what we do and don't do. So it is a long process, but it feels warranted, and we gotta start with the scope.
Got a motion, you need a second.
We had a motion, are you
I'll
second?
second
Who motioned? Jason?
it. Jason.
Jason? Oh,
Ricky?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Can I borrow your agenda? Okay. Are we done?
Future agenda items.
No, okay, possible future agenda items. Colin, I gave you some and I didn't bring my list. Okay,
So, Kathy,
Yes.
these may be them here.
yes, they are.
I did get your notes, and I believe they're on your screen now, I hope. You had discussed, future topics of airport airspace safety, review of the airport's 5-year capital improvement plan, and recommended utilization of airport bond funds. I'm sorry, it's been which basically means we've got these bond funds just sitting there, and as Mike mentioned, the thought, or someone mentioned that the thought was that was going to be geared towards a terminal, but it may be time for the board to consider other things. A runway 18 Pappy light check or replacement. So it's.
Am I the only one? I'm not, am I?
Only one what?
They seem off.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't use them?
Well, if you wouldn't come in upside down, Kathy, if you wouldn't come in upside down to land.
I'm pretty sure they need to be looked at. It's not. I don't think it's just me.
Okay.
Do you agree? Do we have audience agreement? Yep. There we
Okay.
go. Yes, I think they need to be looked at.
Yeah,
I don't think
and
they're
over the
very
years,
accurate.
I've heard different comments about that 1/8 size, and those are older lights. If you ever got out close to them and looked at them, the 3.6 Pappies are much newer than so it may be time to replace
that
those.
feels like 3 degrees.
Yeah,
This
and that may
doesn't.
be good bond money, and it may be a grant.
It
It
feels
very
like-
well could be grant eligible.
Ramp grant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
ramp grant. So.
I mean, we can
Uh,
talk about it in the future, obviously.
Yeah, and then the last one we had preliminarily talked about was that we were approached by I say a small scale scheduled service provider to provide I call it puddle jumping service or commuter service from here to the DFW airport. So we have.
With this new golf course going into play, that's.
Yeah, I mean, it was the golf course that finally led this entity to approach us. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's not to go into tonight, but there's a full discussion
There's
on
a
that.
lot.
There's some background info, and that the discussion kind of came and went because it was tied to some deadlines. So
Yeah.
we'll fill you in later on that. But certainly like our discussion today about unleaded fuel tanks and service, there'll be a larger discussion about who is that another audience potentially for this airport? Is this a direction we want to go, and what's our willingness to invest?
We want to
in
pull you guys into the loop if you want to on that, and because it cycles about at this time every year, the deadline for the grants and the agreements. So we basically have another 10 to 12 months to work on the next cycle if this is something you want to chase. And so introducing you to that and just getting your advice on that would be good. So are they any
I mean, the
of
airport
those?
airspace safety. I don't know how we get some sort of FAA study. I don't know if we can. I think it's time. I think we need to put that on a future agenda.
Okay.
You know, how busy can our airspace be, especially with so many flight students? What is the limit? What's the capacity? What's safe? What's not? I think we need to start addressing that.
with potential to evaluate future policies in that
Yes.
regard? Okay.
Yeah, and you know, when are we maxed out?
Right.
When is that? I don't think anybody could answer that question. So
Okay.
that should be a future.
Any objections to any of those?
It was mentioned earlier too about recovery of capital costs. How do we implement that? I think that feeds into the 5-year CIP. That could be a separate bullet. That may be a different element of that discussion rather than a recap of where we are with our CIP projects. But we have that one as well.
Recovery of what?
Recovery of capital costs. How do we implement that in potential fees and
fees.
services?
Right.
Does anybody have anything else they want to add to the future? Yeah, no? I think we're tired.
We should have done this one first.
I know, right? Might have been able to think.
Yeah, I can't read straight now.
I would be open to discussion of utilization of bond funds for something that generates revenue. I like that topic.
Mhm. Anybody want to add anything? All right.
You
Do
wanna?
we have this sheet? Or you have it? I don't think I've seen that sheet.
You don't have this one? Did this not come in the packet?
It's in the packet.
Was it? Okay, I just missed it.
It should be on your screen.
Yeah, I see it on the screen. Oh,
You got the
yeah,
paper
okay,
copy?
here it is. Never mind.
It's on
I
that
got it.
cover sheet. Yep.
I got it.
Okay, do you want us to vote on this?
And we're not limited to these for the
Yeah.
next meeting or whatever.
I
There's,
like
it's
this,
just,
it's good,
it's
I like
just
this.
getting ahead of it.
Mhm.
There's obviously gonna be more, than this, and they don't all have to come at the next meeting.
I mean, this
so.
is just discussion here, right? You don't need any kind of
You
motion,
need
do you?
anything on
No,
this?
no, no,
Just-
yeah,
This is just
No,
what we think.
Nothing
we want.
official, just
Okay.
help us make the list, and we'll circle back around and decide which meetings they'll be on.
Agreed.
And you guys can always feed those to the airport manager. It doesn't have to come this way. It's just, we had a pile of them when we started thinking about it, and Kathy's like, we got enough for this agenda, let's start a list for the next, so.
Okay, are we ready to adjourn? Everybody's making motions.
I heard Jason.
Second.
Jason, Ricky? All in favor?
Oh, yes.
Let's go.
All right, thank y'all so much.
Yeah, absolutely.